Hi, doing another video here for grailoftruth.com, and today's video is on Bible chronology. And this is going to be a more controversial video because it departs from probably what's the most popular prevailing viewpoints of Bible chronology, according to mainstream opinion, the Judeo and Christian viewpoints. The chronology that I'm presenting is a little bit different from those. It's still around roughly 6,000 years. However, I do differ on some major points in terms of what I believe the text shows. But part of the reason I'm putting that out here is so that others can take a look at it and critique it, and maybe bring something to light that I haven't seen, because it's still a work in progress for me, and I'm making revisions to it as well. So that's part of my reason for putting this out here. But I think as a whole, it's a pretty good understanding of what the Bible shows as the proper chronology for time, or what it has recorded as the chronology of time up to this point. So in order to get into this, first I kind of have to go over a little bit how the ancients recorded astronomy and kept track of time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the year, I'm going to use an astronomy program. I'm going to go to the year 3967 BC on April the 10th. And we're going to go ahead and go to sunrise here. So I'll go ahead and adjust the date here. So I'm going all the way to 4:30 in the morning. And I got to go to the east because that's where the sun comes up. Okay. Now you notice I have the zodiac in here. And the reason why I have the zodiac in here is because that's part of the ways that the ancients were able to keep track of time. To kind of show you how that works, I'm going to bring the sun up real quick here. Okay. The sun travels through one of the signs of the 12 signs of the zodiac per month on average. So by the time it gets all the way back, in this case it's in Taurus, by the time it gets all the way back to Taurus again, you know you've got a new year. And so in that way, the ancients were able to know when it's time to, plant crops again, when winter's about to be over. It was an important system for them because they didn't have the Gregorian calendar system or the mathematically based system that we have today. They had to rely on the stars. And so in addition to that, they came up with all kinds of lore and stories about the stars, and that's where they began to get into astronomy, because they began to come up with all these different kinds of ideas about the stars influencing day-to-day life and so forth. That's different from the timekeeping aspect of it. The timekeeping aspect of it is actually quite interesting, and we still use the stars to keep track of time today. The sun is a star, and when it comes up, that it's a new day. So we're relying on the stars as well. But again, that's astronomy. That's different from astrology, because the Bible is against astrology, which really is a perversion of God's system, rather than something new altogether. So anyways, getting back to how this works, the sun will progress through one sign of the zodiac approximately every month. However, there is something else that takes place called precession, where the actual zodiac itself will slowly shift over time because the Earth is wobbling on its axis about every 24,000 years. So roughly every 2,000 years or so, it's going to, the zodiac itself will have moved over about one position. And these are called ages. So when this happens, you're transitioning from one age to the next. And the Bible refers to, when's the end of the age, when's the start of this age, and so forth. That was a common question because it's a very hard thing for the ancients to try to figure out. But this has an effect on their astronomy and a whole bunch of different other areas, which I can go into later on. But kind of getting back to this here. So you have the sun that will give you the position that'll tell you what month you're in. Now, when the moon makes one circuit through its cycle, going from a new moon to a full moon and back to new moon again, that obviously is 1 month. The word month comes from the moon. It's the lunar cycle. And so what happens is the moon will travel around, come back to where the sun is in the zodiac again, and that'll represent 1 month. But of course the sun has moved ahead a little bit. So what happens is you don't actually get 12 lunar months perfectly every year. Some years you'll get 13. And so the ancients had to make an adjustment for that every couple of years, where they would add an extra month into the calendar to make up for it, a leap month, if you will, just like we have a leap year. And then the other planets, they travel on a much longer cycle through the zodiac, some of them shorter, like, for example, Mercury and Venus, because they orbit around the sun inside of the Earth's orbit, whenever we see them progress across the sky, here I'll show you, they're always kind of dancing. Here's Mercury, and here's Venus. You'll notice they always kind of dance around the sun. They never get too far out of the range of the sun. So they might go forward a little bit, they might go backwards a little bit, depending on where they are in their orbit, but they're always within 1 or 2 zodiac signs from the sun as the sun moves across the sky. Oops. And that's just the nature of their orbits. Now, the other planets, the visible planets, because the ancients could only see the planet, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter. Those 7 heavenly objects were the only things that they could see visibly moving through the sky. The other planets, Uranus, Neptune, they were too far away for the visible eye. And so the other planets will progress more slowly through the zodiac. Saturn and Jupiter have a much more slower cycle. Mars will go through the zodiac transition every a couple years, a little give or take. So because of that, they were able to keep track of certain astronomical events over long term or over many years, versus the annual cycles that they could keep track of with the sun, the moon, Mercury, and Venus. And so in this way, they're able to know when certain events happen in history. They're able to set times for festivals and know when the annual festivals should occur and things of that nature. This was their calendar system. Now, in order for them to know where the stars were in proximity to the sun, because the sun obviously going through the zodiac is the major system for them to keep track of the planets, what they had to do is they had to look at the stars just as the sun came up in the sky. So let me go ahead and go back to, oops, we're going to go back to 4:30 in the morning here. Okay, so here we are about sunrise, and what would happen is as the sun would begin to come up, they would be able to see what stars were on one side of the sun, because the light hadn't obscured them yet. It was just beginning to obscure them. And so then the sun would rise, and then they would lose track. And so then, let's go to the west here. As the sun set in the evening, okay, so now we're going to have the sun set. Now the sun goes down. Now they can see the stars that are in the sky on the other side of the sun as the sun sets. And these were the evening stars and the morning stars. And so in the case of, for example, ancient Israel, they would have what's called the morning and the evening sacrifice, which is they would, at the temple, they would sacrifice a sheep in the morning, and then they would sacrifice a sheep in the evening. Well, it was common practice in the ancient world, in order to keep track of where the stars were and to make recordings for their calendar purposes, to make those recordings at morning and evening. And this, in the case of Israel, this would have coincided at the time of the morning and the evening sacrifice. Now, then afterwards they would take the sheep, and that would be partially, it would be the food for the priests, and it would also be they would use the sheep for things like making vellum or making parchment for scripture, so that they could write scripture on the skin of the animal and so forth. So they were doing this every day because they were continuing to record the Bible and record their astronomical recordings and things of that nature for the calendar purposes. All the different things that they did in that time. And this was not just Israel. This is obviously all the cultures that were basically doing this, because this is how they kept track of things. You also notice that in ancient cultures they would try to create large stone monuments like the pyramids or Stonehenge that were very permanent and very heavy and couldn't be moved, because now they have a permanent marker that doesn't change from year to year to year, that they can use in order to measure the stars against. And so they had all kinds of ingenious ways of doing this. For example, they might create a long shaft that a starlight, you'd know where its position is at the exact same time the following year, because the light could only go down that shaft without hitting the sides of the shaft when it's in a certain position in the sky once a year. So that's one example. Or if they have a very heavy object that they don't have to worry about weathering, like a mountain where the part of the side could fall off or whatever, they'd be able to take, like Stonehenge or something like that, they'd be able to take and look at the exact position of the stars in the sky against that particular very heavy object. And so they create large monuments and temples and things of that nature, because it would assist them in being able to make sure that over the long term they could record astronomical recordings and keep track of their calendar, which were very important for knowing when to plant crops and keep their communities going. And so by doing this, they were able to put together a pretty good understanding of the calendar system. Then, of course, in addition to that, they came up with the zodiac and the stories. They came up with all different kinds of stories behind the zodiac and so forth. I actually think that the first person to name the zodiac was Adam, because one of the things it says in the Bible is that Adam named all the animals. Well, I think that also partially is an allusion to him naming the zoo, the zodiac, the heavenly animals, if you will, as part of the system of keeping time that I think was set up from the beginning. So anyways, that's kind of a little understanding of how ancient astronomy works. So if we go back to, I'm going to go back here to 39, New Year's 3967, which is day 4, I think, of creation, according to my reckoning here, which is April 10th, which would have been the first day of the ancient New Year because it starts in spring. And in that case, that's the constellation of Taurus. So now it's shifted a little bit, but Taurus in the ancient time, that would have been, before the precession shifted, that would have been the very first astronomical constellation of the new year. So let me get my calendar here, celestial calendar set up. So I'm going to go back to 4:30 in the morning. Okay, so now we're going to go to the east because that is where the sun's going to rise. And as the sun begins to rise, it's 4:30 in the morning. We're going to notice, we're going to look for the stars now, just like the ancients did. And this is Babylon is where I have the land position looking at this. So this is ancient Babylon, roughly not quite 6,000 years ago. So now the first star that comes up is Mercury. And then as we continue to see sunrise, you'll notice now we can see them all at once. We don't have to wait till the evening to get the evening stars, but we're going to be able to see them all at once because of this software. You'll notice that all the stars are all positioned in Taurus. So you have Mercury, Jupiter, the Moon, the Sun, Venus, and Mars. Venus, Mars, Moon, Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter. They're all in the constellation of Taurus, which is the very first constellation of the first month of the year. And in addition to that, the Moon is a brand new moon. In fact, it's exactly a brand new moon. If we go back to when the sun begins to come up, okay, the moon is just starting to cross over as the sun comes up from the old moon, the prior month, to the new moon. And so literally at dawn, it is the very first second, the very first day of the very first year of what I believe is creation. Now, how did I come up with this date? I came up with this date because originally I was doing Bible chronology, and I was adding up all the dates in the Bible, all the years of the kings, all the years of the patriarchs, and so forth. And I started by going forward in time. I started actually with the time that the Israelites entered into Egypt. And I went forward in time, and I added up all the dates that way. But then from there, I went backwards in time, too, because I realized that this particular time that I started with, which was around 1702 BC, it says that there was a great famine in Egypt, and that's what caused the Israelites to have to go down to, there was a great famine in the whole world, and that's what caused the Israelites to have to go down into Egypt, where Joseph already was, and that's how they ended up there for for a couple hundred years of bondage before the Exodus. Well, this particular famine, this global famine, actually shows up in a lot of different cultures in their ancient astronomical recordings. The Chinese and so forth, for example. So there actually is a global famine recorded, and we know from their astronomical records that this happened around 1702 BC. So because of that, I looked at that and compared to the scriptures and believed that that was probably a good candidate for the famine that occurred at the time before the Israelites entered into Egypt. So from there, I now had a date to work with from adding up all the dates in the Bible. And so I was able to go forward in time, but then once I went forward, I started going backwards and adding up all the years that way. And when I added up all the years backwards, I got to this particular year. So what did I do? You go on the astronomical program, I look at the position of the stars for the first month, which would have been Taurus, and lo and behold, all the planets, except for one, Saturn, are all gathered in Taurus, and the first day of the first month starts exactly at dawn in this particular year. So I think this is a pretty good candidate for if not the first day of creation, the fourth day of creation, because again, the sun, moon, and stars were created on the fourth day, not the first day. So because that's 3967, we're going back 4 days. 3968 is kind of the reference date that we would use for progressing forward throughout time. Possibly 3967 because we're on the Gregorian system, which our calendar starts in December, not in the spring like theirs do. So anyways, so if we look at this here now, as I mentioned, there's one planet missing that's not in Taurus, and I'll go ahead and we're going to move the clock here ahead, so we're going to go, I'll shift it way ahead here. When we get through the zodiac here, we get to Libra. You notice that Saturn is over here in Libra. So we got Saturn, Virgo, oops, a little bit crazy here, Leo. Let me shift it by the clock. Sorry about that. Okay, so we got Saturn, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, and Taurus. So we go Taurus. Taurus is the first month. Gemini, if the sun were in Gemini, it would be the second month. Cancer would be the third month. Leo would be the fourth month. Virgo would be the fifth month, and Libra is the sixth month. Now that means that in the first month the sun is in the first constellation, and exactly at the opposite end of the calendar is in the sixth month is Saturn. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at the scripture, the Holy Bible, and we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1. Okay, and we're going to go to the fourth day of creation. In Genesis 1:14, it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, and for days and for years." So it's not just for days and years; it's also for signs and for seasons, which involves all the planets, not just the sun and the moon. So you got the months, you know when the festivals are to take place. You can keep track of history over a long period of time, etc. This was the original calendar system that God set up right away in Genesis. Now, if we go to Genesis chapter 2, it says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and the host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he had rested from all his work which God had created and made." God, from the beginning, set apart the seventh day as separate from the other 6 days of creation. That was the day of rest. So going back to our astronomical program here, all the planets are starting in Taurus, which except for Saturn, which is at completely the opposite end, set apart from all the other planets. Now, our 7 days of the week are based on the names of the planets. Mondays for the moon, Sundays for the sun. In the English vernacular, they're based on Nordic gods, but those Nordic gods represent the planets. And you can see that in like the Latin-based languages, where, for example, Lunis, lunar, that's Monday in Spanish. Martis, Mars, that's Tuesday. Miraculous, Mercury, that's Wednesday, and so on and so forth. And obviously Saturn is Saturday, which is the Jewish Sabbath. That's the seventh day. So Saturday is set apart as the seventh day, keeping it separate from all the other planets, which represent the other days of the week, which are all gathered in the starting position that you would expect to find them if you're going to look at the system that would represent the very start of the time cycle that God would have created from the beginning. And we find this in the year that the Bible adds up to, which is exactly what I would expect to find. By the way, this also would suggest to me that there's a doctrine out there called the lunar Sabbath, and this is kind of an aside subject, but you can look into it. But the idea that the lunar Sabbath, that the moon is really the difference in deciding the Sabbath, because it is based on the lunar cycle rather than on a progression of 7 days. It would suggest that doctrine is actually incorrect. That it's not based on the moon, but it's actually 7 progressive days, because if Saturn is set apart and Saturn's the seventh day and it's the day of rest, then it's always the seventh day rather than based on the phases of the moon. But you can look on YouTube for the idea of the lunar Sabbath and the debate about that. But anyways, so there is what I believe to be the first day of creation. And again, I didn't find this by going and just randomly looking at this. I find this by adding up the dates of the Bible and then going to the astronomy program and seeing what the dates would indicate. And this is what it shows. So that is the system for looking at the astronomy of what would have occurred on that particular day of creation. Now I'm going to go back to the Bible scripture here, and I'm going to look at one more thing so you can kind of see how this lines up. Just one moment here. Okay, this is a compilation of the ages of the patriarchs that are listed in Genesis. Adam was born, he lived to 130, he had Seth, his son, and then he died at age 930. Seth at the 130th year, he lived 105 years, he had the next son, so forth, and died at 912. It goes on through this throughout Genesis. And so if you add up all those dates in Genesis, you will come up with according to the Masoretic text, you will come up with the flood taking place roughly around 1,656 years into this genealogy. Now that's different from the Samaritan and the Septuagint, and I have another video that kind of explains a little bit about the difference between these, but the Septuagint basically is a text where the Jewish scribes got together and translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek a couple hundred years before the time of Jesus, and it was actually the Septuagint is actually the what many believe to be the Bible that Jesus would have read and quoted from, or at least the people in his time, because Greek was the lingua franca back then, in addition to Hebrew being the religious language. The Samaritan text is another text that's very ancient that heralds out of the area of northern Israel, or where the northern tribes were. And then the Masoretic text is the traditional text that was handed down from scribes in Hebrew from year to year, all the way back to the ancient recording of the Bible, all the way back to, I guess, when Moses recorded on Mount Sinai. However, the oldest versions that we have of the Masoretic text only date to, I think, like about 800 years or so after Christ. So we don't have very old copies of Masoretic, but the copies that we do have should be pretty accurate because they're copied precisely. They had a very good system for making sure that they got it correct from year to year, or from copy to copy. And this was actually verified by the Dead Sea Scrolls, because later when they uncovered the Dead Sea Scrolls and they compared the texts that were found that were dated back to even before Christ and compared to the Masoretic, the errors that they found were almost negligible in many of the texts. So we know that the Masoretic text recorded very well over time. But there is a difference in the dates of the patriarchs that are recorded in the Septuagint, the Samaritan, and the Masoretic texts. And you can see that here. And by and large, what the Septuagint did is they added, in many instances, about 100 years to the birth years of the different patriarchs. So, for example, if Arphaxad had a child at age 35, and the Septuagint, it would be 135. If Selah had a child at age 30, Septuagint would be 130. Well, that, in addition to some other variances, really throws off the timeline in the Septuagint compared to the Masoretic text. And then again, the Samaritan is a third instance where it's completely different. I tend to believe that the Masoretic text is the most correct one, because that's the one that's traditionally handed down through the scribes all the way back to ancient times, as opposed to the Greek version, which is a translation of those original texts. But one of the things that you'll notice here, that this is one variance I had to make in terms of calculating my time adjustments here, is that after the flood, there is an additional character here called Canaan, and another Canaan, because there's the Canaanites, Canaan, which is a different spelling, but that's not included in the Masoretic text, but is included in the Septuagint and the Samaritan text. Now, in addition to that, the New Testament in the genealogies of Jesus does record Canaan as being one of the patriarchs in the lineage of Christ. So because of that, the preponderance of evidence which suggests to me that Canaan actually does belong in here. Why it's admitted from the the Masoretic text, I'm not sure. It might have something to do with a confusion about the curse of Canaan that was given from after the flood with Noah. It says, which you can read about in Genesis. So maybe because of that, they blotted out the name Canaan. I mean, there's not sure exactly what the circumstance is with that. But regardless, what we can kind of figure out here is if we look at this pattern that the Septuagint was doing by adding 100 years to the birth years, and we conclude that that holds true for the patriarchs here in the case of the Masoretic, then we can assume that if the Septuagint has 130 years for the birth year of Canaan's son, then in the Masoretic it should have been 30 years because they only added 100 for most of these. So that being the case, what I did in my particular assessment of genealogy is I added 30 years in here for Canaan after the flood to my timeline based on what I feel is accurate because, like I said, Canaan does appear in the genealogy of Jesus in the New Testament. So I believe that is the proper assessment for that date. Now, this happens after the flood because the year approximately 1656 into this system is when the flood occurs. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a look at a certain point in Scripture going forward 1656 years, and then I'm going to compare that to the astronomical record in the software and see if that shows us anything based on the what the Scriptures say. So just one moment here. Okay, so we're in Genesis chapter 7 now, and this is the part of the Bible where the flood occurs. And so Noah goes into the ark, and it says that Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were upon the earth. Okay, and this the flood basically lasted about a year, and it let's see, I'll give you the timeline here. For yet 7 days it will cause rain upon the earth, 4 days and 40 nights. Okay, Noah did according to the Lord commanded him. Noah went in. Okay, let's see here. Okay, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, in the 17th day of the month, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were open, and the rain was on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So we're in the second month. Now, the question is, is this the second month of Noah's life based on his birthday? Well, that's not really how the ancients recognized time. The way they did it is like it's going back to the calendar system. The time would start in the spring when the sun was in that particular constellation, and then that would be whatever year it was of your life, whatever events happened to you during that year. So if Noah was born in, say, the summer or the fall, the following year would be, depending on how you count the time, would be the first year of his life based on that calendar system. So even if Noah was only a couple months old, he would still be considered one based on that calendar system. So the 600th year of Noah's life doesn't necessarily mean it's 600 years from his birth. It could mean that he's 509 and 2 days, and it just so happens that that second day falls within the 600th calendar year based on the astronomy. Or it could be that he's actually 601, just shy of 602, but because it falls in the prior year in the calendar system, it's the 600th year. It depends on how they reckon the time. But the important thing is that it's the 600th year based on the calendar system. That's how they keep track of the time. And because of that, we don't have to worry about, when adding up the ages of the patriarchs, the extra days and extra months, because obviously not everybody's born on the exact same day and live and die full years. They have extra weeks and extra months. Because the ancients recorded their calendar system based on the astronomy, we know that the 600th year, you add the extra years for the next patriarch and so forth, they all will add up to an accurate time period, because they don't take into account those weeks and months. They take account the astronomical chart system. It's a little confusing, but hopefully you'll kind of get it. So the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 7th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. And again, that's the 600th year based on the calendar, the astronomical charts. So now we're going to go ahead and go to the next chapter here. So the earth, the water prevailed on the earth for 150 days. Let's see, and fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. We're in verse 8:3. The waters returned off the earth continually. After the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated, and the ark rested on the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat. Now remember, this all started in the 2nd month on the 17th day, so now we're about 5 months out. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So let's go now. Again, these are based when they say the 1st day of the month, the 2nd day of the month, so forth, or the 2nd month, the 3rd month. This is based on the ancient calendar system. So if we go back and look at the constellations here, and just one moment, we're going to go going forward in time. Okay, so getting back to what we originally had. Remember, we had 3967 on the 4th day. It's actually 3968, 3967. That year switchover. 3967 we had as the day of creation. Now, the first year of Adam's life would have been the following year. That would have been year 1. So we subtract 1 year as the first year of Adam's life. Okay, and then we subtract. If you add up all the dates of Adam all the way to the flood, Adam had 930 total years based on the astronomical chart, and then all the patriarchs that followed him had their lifespans, etc. The last year that a patriarch was born or died in was the last year on his astrological chart. So, for example, or astronomical chart. So, for example, if Adam lived 930 years, that 930th year, if there was another person born in that year, then the following year would be the first year of that person's life, because that 930th year was still attributed to Adam. That's how they reckon time. They did the same thing with kings. For the reigns of kings, they would have an accession year, and then the following year would be the first year of their reign. So in the case of Adam, like I said, we subtract 1 year for the first year, the 930th year, and then in the case, we have to subtract all what we added up for the dates, which was 1,656 years, according to the Bible, for all the patriarchs. Okay, and that gives us to 2310. Now, we just read that it was the 600th year of Noah's life that the flood occurred and that the waters abated. Now, maybe Noah had a birthday there somewhere, but it doesn't matter, because the 600th year we have to add an extra year, because again, there's no year 0 in your life. You're born, and then the following year is your first year. So we subtract 1 year for the 600th year, and we come up with 2309. So 2309 is what we're going to look at on our astronomical chart. So if we go to the sign for the 10th month, again, the first month is Taurus, so I'm going to kind of backtrack here through the zodiac. So I'll go forward, actually, so you can kind of see it here. All right. Taurus would have been the first month. Gemini is the 2nd month. Cancer is the 3rd month, if the sun were in these houses. Leo is the 4th month. Virgo is the 5th month. Libra is the 6th month. Scorpio is the 7th month. Sagittarius is the 8th month. Capricorn is the 9th month. And here we have Aquarius, that's the 10th month. So because the sun is in Aquarius, we know in the ancient calendar system for this particular system reckoning, that was the 10th month according to their time. So let's go back to the day now. Okay, so we're going to go back to the scripture here, and we're going to says, waters decrease continually until the 10th day in the 10th month. On the 1st day of the month were the tops of the mountains seen. So the 1st day of the 10th month. Okay, so we know we're in the 10th month because we're in Aquarius. That's where the sun is. Now, how do you get the day? Well, the day was recognized, the months, by the moon and the phases of the moon. So if we look here on our calendar here, we see the moon here. As the moon crosses over the sun between the 11th and the 12th, that is the transition from the last month to the next month, because now the phases of the moon will start to grow again. Here they were decreasing until they got to a brand new moon. So between the 12th and the 11th here is the when they they wouldn't actually call the new moon a day. They would have to wait until they actually saw a slight sliver, because some days you might have 1 or 2 days of where you'd see nothing but no moon before that sliver began to appear. So they never knew quite what day was the start of the month. It was it 1 day after the last phase of the moon cycle, or did it start 2 days later? They'd have to watch the moon basically to see when the new day starts or the new month starts. So as the moon progresses by the sun, they would watch for the sliver of the moon, and that's how they would know that the new month had started, the first day of the month had started. So in this case, the first day of the 10th month of the year 2309, because remember we have to add 1 year here because my astronomy program has a year 0. So we're looking for the year 2309 BC. Okay, the sun is in the 10th month astronomical constellation, and the moon is just beginning to pass it, so we know that's the first day of the 10th month. Well, what do we have when we look at that here? All the planets again are all gathered together around Aquarius, and what's the constellation Aquarius? The water being poured out. And this is at the end of the flood when all the water is poured out and the land first begins to appear, which is very important in doing astronomical references, because you needed to look at the land to be able to compare certain things in the sky and so forth. So when the land first began to appear, just like we went back to Genesis at sunrise, and on the 4th day, as I showed earlier, 1656 years earlier, plus an extra year for the 0th years and so forth, we saw all the planets were gathered together, only in that time in Taurus, which is the first day of the month. In this case, they're in the 10th month, which is Aquarius, which is the water being poured out, which happened at the end of the flood. All the planets happened to be gathered together at this particular time, except for one again. And again, just like before, there is one planet that is separate, and that's Mars in this case. And just like when we saw Saturn was set apart, it was set apart in Libra on the day of creation. In this case, Mars is set apart, and again, it's in Libra, which is representative of judgment. So we have one planet set apart in judgment, and again, here we have all the stars gathered again, except for we do have Saturn, which is kind of right on the edge of entering into Aquarius, but it's even on the fishtail sign edge. But it is still just starting to come into the Aquarius constellation. So you have all the stars gathered again here. And this doesn't happen as often as you might think, because I can just go ahead and kind of go through the cycle here, and you'll see how quickly the stars spread apart. It doesn't take many days before there's no conjunction. So these conjunctions don't happen all that often. But again, right at the time that the Bible suggests, here they are. They're all coming together right around Aquarius with the water pouring out. And it happens to coincide with the exact time frame that the Bible would suggest. So there again is another confirmation, in my opinion, that the dates in the Bible are accurate, and that this is the right chronology that I'm showing here. So now from here, we're going to go ahead and go back to the scriptures. I'm going to move forward so we can get through the rest of the Bible. I'm going to get out of the astronomy aspect of it a little bit. It does come into play later, by the way. If you read certain passages of the Bible, like, for example, Revelation, there's some passages that talk about the woman giving birth and the clothed in the sun and the moon's at her feet and so forth. Those are actually astronomical references, and I found those as well. And there's one coming up that has that type of conjunction, but the other one occurred at the time that the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. That also matches that configuration as well. So, but I'll get into that later in the video. So for right now, I'm going to go to the scriptures, and we're going to move ahead in time and look at the dates and see where they take us. So one moment here. Okay, so here we are again with our Wikipedia example of all the dates here, and we have Canaan here, which is important because he's not found in the Masoretic text. He's found in the only in the Septuagint and the Samaritan text. However, again, we can go off the pattern here. That the Septuagint uses, where they add about 130 years to the birth years. If we add that to Canaan's birth year here, because basically what the Septuagint does is they take the birth years of the Masoretic and they add 100 to them, we can figure out that if they got 130 here for the birth year of his son, we know it's probably 30 here for the birth year of Canaan's son, Selah. So all we got to do is add 30 years basically to account for Canaan. And the reason why I include Canaan, even though he's not in the Masoretic text, is because he's in the Samaritan, he's in the Septuagint, but more importantly, he's in the New Testament in the lineages given for Christ. They include Canaan. So we know that the Canaan's in there. In order to come up with the years, we have to compare it with the Septuagint. So going forward in time, if you look at my other videos, I'll kind of go over this real quick here. I come up with 1702 BC as the time that the Israelites and Jacob entered into Egypt during the famine. And then the Exodus, I have a video on that. It explains that the Israelites were there for 300 years, and that's called "How Long Were the Israelites in Egypt?" You can look that on my channel as well, which brings us to the Exodus date of 1402. And I'll go through the rest of the numbers here real quick. There's a scripture that says that there's 480 years from the time of the Exodus until the 4th year of Solomon's reign. So from 1402, all we got to do is subtract. Hang on one second here. 1402 minus 480, and that gives us 922. Now from there, if we take the list of all the kings and we add them up in the Bible, that will give us our next date, which is the time that the temple was destroyed under when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians invaded. That brings us to the year 422. Now this is the very controversial part, because this is very different from what the most mainstream Christianity believes. They have Cyrus liberating the captivity around the year 539 BC. And I don't have the temple even be destroyed and the captivity start until year 492. But I'll show you why I believe that's accurate, and why I think the secular history recording of it might be a little bit wrong, or there might be some other reasons why people believe that. But anyways, I have 492 as the year that the temple was destroyed, Solomon's temple. And then if we subtract 70 years from that, we get around the year 422 for the time that the captivity was freed from from Babylon, and that they returned to rebuild the temple. I'm going to get into that a little bit, but first I kind of want to go over the Exodus, because this is kind of a neat area. I'm going to do a separate video on this, but just to kind of understand what was going on in the Exodus here. First of all, when the Israelites went into Egypt, there's these people in history called the Hyksos. And what happened was Joseph was the right-hand man of Pharaoh for a while in Egypt, until another Pharaoh rose up after he died that knew not Joseph, and then basically overthrew the Israelites and put them into slavery and bondage until the time of the Exodus. I believe these people were the Hyksos, which are recorded in history, which are basically shepherd kings. And it says that when the Israelites came in to live in Egypt, that Joseph told them to tell Pharaoh and the Egyptians basically that they were shepherds, because the Egyptians had a stigma about shepherds and they would keep separate, steer clear of them. And then also have the land of Goshen, which is the best land in Egypt. But anyways, the Hyksos, they ruled, according to history, they were foreigners that ruled in Egypt, and they were Semitic in origin, and they were overthrown about 1540 BC, and they went to this place in the Negev desert where they were chased out to, called Sharuan. Excuse me, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But basically, the Egyptians chased them down and wiped them out there, and everyone who was left was made slaves, including the ones that were left in Egypt. And so Moses did not repeat the same mistake. God didn't let the Israelites repeat the same mistake of just fleeing Egypt, only to be chased down later and destroyed. And actually, I believe that Rahab the harlot was one of the remnant of that. But I can get into that reasoning later. So anyways, the Hyksos. And actually, one of the names for like sheep and horses and so forth in Hebrew, horses, sus, but the cattle and so forth, or livestock, kind of heralds back to that name. The Hyksos, they, I believe, were the Israelites, but when they were driven out around 1540 BC, from that point on, the Israelites were slaves basically to Pharaoh until the Exodus around 1402. So this falls within this time period here. The time that they were cast out, some people thought maybe that was the Exodus, but that wasn't the case. That was when the Israelites were actually overthrown from the Pharaoh that knew not Joseph, that rose up after, and basically took back the kingdom of Egypt from the Israelites. So anyways, the Moses, when he led them out of Egypt, let me go to Google Earth here, show you what's going on. When Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, he didn't repeat the same mistake that, or God didn't let him repeat the same mistake that happened the first time when they tried to flee as the Hyksos. The easy path to get to Canaan in the Promised Land is right here along the Mediterranean Sea. But there's another route called the King's Route, which is the King's Highway, which is a very, very ancient trade route that goes along this area here on this side of the Jordan River, and then crosses over here through the middle of the Sinai, and comes up in Egypt here. This is called the King's Highway. And I believe that this is the route of the wilderness of the Red Sea that Moses took them along instead of the short route, which was this way. Now, when he got here to the Gulf of Aqaba, the Israelites came up to this area here, which would have been Etham, but then God had them turn around and go back. Now, there's a whole bunch of canyons and wadis of valleys and so forth that wind through this area. And so what happened is when they went back, they didn't repeat the same mistake of the Hyksos, which was just to flee and think, oh, we're home free. Look, we made it around the Red Sea. We're out of Egypt, because they would have gotten chased down and destroyed just like they did the last time. The Israelites were led here through these canyons, and they basically ended up on this beach here, which is Nueba Beach, and they would have come out of this canyon here through a mouth in the gorge, which is Pi-hahiroth in the Bible, and they ended up in this beach here, and the Egyptians would have come up after them, but God basically stood as a pillar of fire and smoke and kept the two parties separate, so they were protected until the time of the Red Sea crossing, which happened here. Now, there's actually an ancient pillar position here from the time of Solomon to mark the crossing, and then there's one on the opposite side of the shore too. And I believe somewhere around here they got a picture of that, but you can go on Google Earth and find these as well. But right in this area here, there's a land bridge that goes underneath the water, and on this side and on this side it's very deep, but right through the center here, it's shallow, and that is where the waters were parted and where they crossed. So they're able to go through this land bridge. And actually, I think it's over here. But the guy that found this is Ron Wyatt, and you can watch some of his videos on YouTube. But there are still you can still see the chariot wheels. They dove down and they found them and took pictures of them. They're still there today. And okay, there's one that's gold veneer. Now we know what time frame this relates to in Egypt, because this is a 4-spoke chariot wheel, and that only comes from a very certain dynasty within the Egyptian time frame. All the rest of the dynasties had 6 spokes and 8 spokes and so forth. So we know that this time frame of the Exodus dates to the period that I was talking about. So they left at 1402 BC, and they came across here to this coastline. And there's a mountain that they would have been across, which in the Bible is recorded as Baal Zephon, which means Lord of the North. But there's a Mount Mazapha, which the Ma is a prefix, and then Zapha is the name of the mountain, Jabal Mount Mazapha. That term Zapha is actually an Arabic term that's used today to talk about a wedding procession. And you can find videos on YouTube of people performing the same type of ceremony. But the Bible says that when the Israelites came across the Red Sea, that Miriam led with tambourines and sang a song, then that basically a victory of making it past the Red Sea and the Egyptians being drowned. And that particular song is sung today as part of Jewish wedding rites during wedding ceremonies. So, or referred to, I think, as the ketubah, or it has to do with weddings. But that again is near that mountain, and of course, this path this procession that they were heading towards Mount Sinai, was the path where the nation of Israel was to be wedded to their God on Mount Sinai, and then where the law was handed down. Now, if we go over here to Mount Sinai, this is Midian over here. This is where Moses was hanging out with the priests of Midian down in this area. And this is the area where he would have spent 40 years shepherding Jethro's flocks before going to free the Israelites, and where he saw the burning bush and so forth. So he was familiar with the area. But this is Jabal al-Lawz, which is Mount Sinai. And the mount today is still the top of it. Let me see if I can find a picture here. No, that's not it. The top of it is still burnt black, and it's not volcanically burnt because the rocks are burnt all the way through, not like a volcano where they're kind of, not burnt through, rather. I have to look that up, but the way they're burnt is different from the way a volcano would burn them, so they know it's not volcanically burned. It's supernaturally burned. The reason this top of this mountain is black. Let me see if I can find another picture. There's all kinds of remnants from when the Israelites were here. This is the golden calf altar, and let me see if I can find some other. Let's see, because it said at the time that this all happened, that God descended on the mountain in smoke and fire, and that mountain is still black today from it. Let's see here. This is the tip here that's all kind of burnt off. The Israelites were not allowed to walk on it, and there's a reason for that. In addition to it being holy, just as Moses was to take his shoes off at the burning bush, God had told the well, for one thing, the wearing of footwear is kind of if you show your foot to someone in Arabic culture, that's considered an offense. But the other reason is that God had told Abraham that wherever his descendants, the sandals of their feet would basically tread, that land would be given to them. Well, Mount Sinai is holy, set apart for God, and so the people weren't allowed to go on the mountain, touch the mountain, and Moses had to take his sandals off when he was walking on the Holy Land. Let's see here. Okay, here's the rock at Horeb, and this is water erosion, and there's no water in this area, so if they have a close-up, you can find this on YouTube as well. There's videos on it. Let's see if I can find, there's a picture. Some of these rocks actually have outlines of the Israelites' footwear, where they actually imprinted them on the rocks. Hang on one second. Let me pause the video here 1 second. I'm going to find this stuff. Well, there's a picture on here somewhere of the what I was talking about, but you can see how burned that mountain is. Oops, it's the same picture. So then if I scroll in here, you can see some of the. This is the golden calf altar. There's actually pictures of the calf on the side of it. That's Egyptian in origin and not native to the area, and they don't have that anywhere else in that region. Let me see here, and there's some other leftover archaeological. You can just kind of go on Google Earth and click on these. Let's see if I can find some more here. A lot of them are just pictures of the mountain itself. There's an ancient graveyard. See how black the mountain is burned. Hang on a second here. Well, hold on a second. These things are all over the place in this area. They're, I guess, for holding tents together. But the Israelites wandered in the region for 40 years. Again, there's golden calf altar. See again, the mountaintop is burnt. Let's see here. There's some more evidence of Israelites being there. I'm trying to find if they have I know one of these has a picture of the actual some of the drawings that are left on the side of the altar and so forth. Let's see if I can find it. Well, what you can do, like I said, you can just go on Google Earth or just go on YouTube and you'll find videos by Ron White that kind of goes over this. Okay, hold on. Okay, there's an example of this is on the side of the golden calf altar of the Egyptian depiction of, I guess it's the god Hathor, which is not native to the area and only occurs in this area. So again, that would help to confirm the Bible. 1 second. So anyways, that's where Mount Sinai is, and then they came along here. Well, they wandered in the desert for 40 years, but eventually they crossed the Jordan River and took the Promised Land. So that brings us to the time of the judges, and then of course, as I mentioned, you get up to the 4th year of Solomon's reign, which the Bible says occurred exactly 480 years after the Exodus. So again, going back to what we had earlier, we have 1402 minus 480, because the Exodus happened in 1402. That brings us to 922 as the 4th year of Solomon's reign, when at the time of the construction of Solomon's temple. And then from there, if you add up all the kings through the books of Kings, that brings us to the year 492 for the time that the temple was burned under Nebuchadnezzar. And then we subtract 70 years from that, and we get to the year 422. Again, this is approximate, give or take a year, for the time of the captivity ending and the Israelites returning from captivity to rebuild the temple again. Now, I'm going to focus in, this is kind of a very brief overview of the chronology. I can go into a lot more detail in these dates and more specifics. But I want to focus in on this next date here because this is one of the more controversial ones, dealing with the time of the captivity, because mainstream popular belief is that the captivity ended with Cyrus taking over the Babylonian Empire in 539. However, I'm going to show you why the biblical dates are correct. So just one moment here. Okay, so we're in the book of Daniel here, and it says in the 1st year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus. Now, Ahasuerus is traditionally the Hebrew translation for the name Xerxes. Okay, so the Darius, the son of Xerxes, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of Chaldeans. So we know it was the particular Darius that was made a king over the realm of Chaldeans, which is the Babylonians. That in that year, Daniel begins to pray, basically, because he knows that the 70 years of the captivity is up. He had understood by reading the book of Jeremiah that the 70 years was about to end. That says, in the 1st year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years, whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. So they've been in captivity for 70 years. He knew that the time was basically coming up, and he begins to repent and pray to God. It says, I set my face unto the Lord to seek in prayer and supplication and fasting and sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed unto the Lord God to make my confession and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping the covenant of mercy to them that love them and keep his commandments. And it continues on, and he basically is repenting for the national sins of Israel at that time that led them into captivity. So as he's praying this prayer, we get down here, and it says, Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even departing, that they may not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. Now, what is that curse that he's talking about? Well, I'm going to show you that here real quick too. Just 1 second. Okay, in Leviticus number 26, one of the books that was handed out to Moses on Mount Sinai, we get the blessing and the curse that God is putting before the nation of Israel. On the curse side of it, He says, but if you will not hearken unto me and will not do these commandments, and if you shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that you will not do all my commandments, but that ye break my covenant, I also will do this unto you. I will appoint over you terror, consumption, and burning og, that shall consume your eyes and cause sorrow in your heart. And you shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. And I'll set my face against you, and you shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you, and ye shall flee when none pursueth you. If you will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. And I will break the pride and power, and I will make you heavy as iron, the heaven as iron, and your earth as brass. Your strength shall be spent in vain, and your land shall not yield or increase, neither shall their trees and land yield their fruits. And if you walk contrary to me and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. I will also send wild beasts among you. You shall be robbed of your children, destroy your cattle, and make you few in number, and your highways shall be desolate. And if you will not be reformed by me for these things, but will walk contrary to me, then I will also walk contrary to you, and will punish you yet 7 times more for your sins, and will bring a sword upon you, and shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. And when ye shall gather together in your cities, I will send pestilence among you, and ye shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. And when I have broken the staff of your bread, 10 women shall bake in one oven, and they shall deliver to you your bread by weight, and ye shall eat and not be satisfied. And if ye will not hearken unto me, but walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you also in fury, and I will chastise you 7 times more for your sins. And ye shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters ye shall eat. And I will destroy your high places, and cut down your images, and cast your carcasses upon the carcass of your idols. And my soul shall abhor you. I will make I will make your cities waste, and bring your sanctuaries into desolation. And I will not smell the savor of your sweet odors. I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in the enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths. As long as it lie desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt upon it. And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send faintness into their hearts in the land of in the lands of their enemies, and the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from the sword, and they shall fall when none pursueth. And if there shall fall one upon another, as it were before a sword, and none pursueth, then ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies, and ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up, and they that are left of you shall pine away in the iniquity of your enemies' lands, and also in the iniquity of your fathers they shall pine away with them, if they shall confess their iniquity. And this is where I'm getting to the part here now, what Daniel was doing in chapter 9. If they shall confess their iniquity, and the iniquity of their fathers, which their trespass, with their trespass which they have trespassed against me, and that they also have walked contrary to me, and that I also have walked contrary to them, and have brought them into their land of their enemies, if then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and if they accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. And the land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbaths, while she lieth desolate without them, and they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity, because even because they despise my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. And yet, after all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them, for I am the Lord their God. But I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt, in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their God. I am their Lord. These are the statutes of the judgments of the laws which the Lord has made between the children of Israel in Mount Sinai in the land of Moses. So this happened around 1402 BC. Now getting back to Daniel, Daniel is realizing this 7 times more, and judgment has come upon Israel for their sins. And all the things that were described there actually happened. Jerusalem was put under siege. The famine, because there was no food in the city, got so great that they were actually eating their own children, and then they were carried off and lived in the land of their enemies, while the land in Israel was left to enjoy her Sabbaths. And then Daniel in chapter 9 is repenting at the end of the 70 years, and God remembers the covenant and restores them back to the nation of Israel to build the temple. Now, the reason why that's important when we talk about this curse of the 7 times more is if we get into Daniel chapter 9, you'll notice that as he's praying this prayer of repentance, it says, O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings and our princes and our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. Let's see. He hath confirmed his words which he spake against us and against all our judges, and judged us, and bring us upon us this great evil. For under the whole heaven has not been done as has been done to Jerusalem, basically, as it is written in the law of Moses. We just read that. All the evil has come upon us, yet made we not our prayer before the Lord, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand the truth. So they didn't repent. Daniel's repenting now on behalf of Israel. Therefore hath the Lord watched upon the evil and brought it upon us, for the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyeth not his voice. And now, O Lord God, that hast brought thy people forth out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand, and hast gotten thee renown at this day, we have sinned and we have done wickedly. And he continues on here, beseeching the Lord basically to hear his prayer. It says, O Lord, hear, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, hearken, and do not defer for thy own sake, O God, for the city and the people called by thy name. Now at this point, an angel shows up, and he says, while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of the people of Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for my holy mountain of my God, Mount Zion, which is where the temple was in Jerusalem. Yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, this is the angel Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision in the beginning, he had a vision earlier, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. Again, they have an evening and morning sacrifice system that they've been doing since ancient times. They didn't have the temple anymore, but they're still carrying on an evening and morning oblation or offering. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came forth. So this is important now. When's the beginning of Daniel's prayer of repentance? Well, it says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes, of the seed of the Medes, which is made the king over the realm of the Chaldeans. So he's starting his prayer then, okay? Now Gabriel says, when he gets down here, at the beginning of thy supplications, at the beginning of his prayer of repentance, the commandment came forth, okay? What commandment? Well, the commandment that they're going to basically restore Israel and restore Jerusalem, because now Daniel's doing what he's supposed to do, as written in the law of Moses. He's repenting, and God's going to remember the covenant that he had with them and restore them to their land. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came forth, and I am now to show thee that thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. This is a vision that he had earlier, which you can read in the earlier chapters of Daniel. Now here's where he gets into the sevens. Remember, God promised to curse them 7 times greater for their iniquities. So now we get into what Gabriel's telling them. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people in thy holy city. The actual translation here is 77s. Okay, so 77s are determined upon thy people in thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and make a reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Now therefore understand that from the going forth of the commandment, when did the commandment come forth? It came forth at the beginning of Daniel's supplications. Now therefore understand from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks the streets shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. After 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people, the prince that shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation. Remember, they're doing sacrifice is in the morning and the evening, and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even to the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. So what's he saying? They were sent to Babylon for 70 years, basically. Well, the land would enjoy their Sabbaths. Gabriel is saying that there are 77s. Now, there's 7 times more determined upon the nation of Israel, because, again, God would curse them 7 times more for their sins. Well, now there are 77s that are determined for the restoration of Israel, but it's not a complete restoration, because if you look at the prophecy, what's going to happen at the end here, the city and the sanctuary are going to be destroyed. Well, at the time of this particular prophecy, the city and the sanctuary already were destroyed because they're in captivity. This is the end of the captivity. They haven't rebuilt the temple yet. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it around 492. This is taking place at the beginning of the first year of Darius, which is in 422, who is the son of Xerxes, and I'll show you that in a second here. Okay, and so 422, 70 times 7. Okay, now this is BC, so 70 times 7, 422. That's 490 years. Okay, so that brings us to, you have to add a year because there's no year 0 on the calculator. You got to figure that out. So that brings us to the year 69 AD. Okay. Now keep in mind that 69 AD, part of that year, that 490 years, goes over into 70 AD because, again, the new year starts in the spring. So the last few months of the 490th year are actually in 70 AD. Well, that was the time that the siege began around Jerusalem, and the city was cut off, and then eventually the sanctuary was destroyed, just like this prophecy is talking about. Now, this prophecy, written in the book of Daniel, is earlier than all those events happening. That's in Daniel's in the Septuagint, the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have copies of Daniel that go back before the temple being destroyed. Now, again, I'm showing you the biblical chronology here, where this leads up to exactly that this prophecy is showing what's going to happen at the end of these 490 years, and that's what happened in history. The temple and the sanctuary was destroyed. So going back here again, we're going to look at this prophecy a little more. Know therefore and understand from the commandment of going forth to Jerusalem, the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Now that's kind of an odd way to say it. They divide the time up here. You have 7 weeks, and then you have 62 weeks, and then you have, which brings us to 69 weeks, and then you have a last week, a 7th week, and it says that he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading abomination, etc., etc. Okay, so why is he breaking it up? Why not just say 70 weeks and leave it at that? There's got to be something significant about that. Now, one of the doctrines about this particular prophecy that's held by a lot of people, or beliefs that's held by a lot of people, is that this last week, the 7th week, is paused because basically from the time that Israel is in a nation and they're in diaspora, and they've been throughout the last 2,000 years haven't been a state again until 1948. That the 7th week is on pause until the tribulation, and then the 7th week basically kicks into gear again, which seems like really strange to me, this idea, because what kind of a time prophecy is it where you could basically say the clock stops and then time goes on and then you can start the clock again? I mean, I could say, well, in exactly 16 days, something's going to happen. But at the 12th day, it's going to stop, and then a whole bunch of days are going to go on, and then it's going to kick in again, and for 4 more days, and then it'll happen. Well, why not just tabulate the entire time frame? I could make anything happen if I was going to do that, as far as a time prophecy. So that doesn't really, that part never really made a lot of sense to me. But this, you'll understand a little bit more how this works out and makes sense. Let's take a look at the king's list here, because remember, this is taking place in the first year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus, who is Xerxes. Okay. So we're going to go to the Achaemenid Empire and the list of kings here. And here we have from 529 BC all the way down through, let's see, it gets all the way down to the time that Alexander the Great takes over the region. This is the Persian Empire. See, what happened was you had the Babylonian Empire, which is the first kind of major world empire. And they You have other cradles of civilization, Egypt and so forth, but what you need to understand is that of all the different cradles of civilization on Earth, Egypt, China, Aztecs, all the different areas where civilization popped up on this planet, there's only one that our modern world stems from originally, and that is Babylon, because the first civilization, the Sumerian civilization, started in the Middle East and Babylon. Everything else came out from there. All our DNA trails lead back to there. Okay, all of our language patterns lead back there. That's where basically the planet spread out from, was from the Middle East. Now, science will say it even goes back further to Africa, but the divergent point is the Middle East. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the African assumption. I think the Middle East is where everything started. So anyways, Babylon's the first kingdom. Babylon was taken over by the Persians in the Persian Empire. The Persians were then, the Greeks took over that empire and inherited the Persian Empire. And then the Greeks transitioned into the Roman Empire, okay? And then the Roman Empire split into two areas. You had the Eastern Empire and the Western Empire. The Western Roman Empire disappeared around the year 500, give or take. And the church rose at that point in time, and the Roman Catholic Church and the papacy, and basically became the predominant authoritative power in Christendom in Europe in that time, in Western Europe. And on the eastern side, the Roman Empire continued as the Byzantine Empire all the way up to the mid-1500s. And then they basically disappeared, although you still have the Eastern Orthodox Church, but that difference between East and West still exists. But the Roman Empire and that culture that came out of that is everything that we have today. It all came around. The reason why, in the World Wars, you had the East versus the West and Germany in the middle and so forth. That all goes all the way back from the divisions between the Greek-speaking Eastern Roman Empire and the Latin-speaking Western Roman Empire. We are the inheritors of that. Now, the Western civilization, which came out of the Roman Empire, and in many sense still can be considered Rome continuing on, the Western civilization then went out and colonized the rest of the planet. So all those other civilizations, China, the Aztecs, the American Indians, everywhere else on the planet, they're great civilizations. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm belittling by saying this, but the fact of the matter is that China never colonized Europe, and the Aztecs never colonized Europe. It was the other way around. It was the inheritors of the Roman civilization that colonized and took over the rest of the world. Now, of course, the age of imperialism ended, and they threw off the colonies, but our whole structure and system is still based on the Roman system. And again, that goes all the way back, Romans, Greeks, Persians, to Babylon. So the Bible laid this out in the book of Daniel, talking about these world empires and showing that basically this is the course of history laid in advance, and the Bible was correct in that. It is through that progress, that line, that gets us to where we are today. And it all started with Babylon, not anywhere else. So anyway, so what we have is we have Babylon, and then we have the Babylonians were taken over by the Persians. Now, conventional history says that they were taken over by King Cyrus around the year 539. I'm going to show you here. It says that the Medo-Persian Empire in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, says was taken over by Darius. And I'll go to that chapter real quick so you can see that. And I believe that either Cyrus is Darius or Cyrus is a co-reign or co-regent of Darius. That may be a different Cyrus than the one in 539, but let me show you here real quick. Okay, in chapter 6, Belshazzar, who is the son of, well, in conventional history it's Nabonidus, but they refer to him also as the son of Nebuchadnezzar. That could mean a direct son or possibly a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar. Belshazzar, which is a king of Babylon, or a co-regent, as the son of the king, has a great feast, and he brings out all the temple treasures in chapter 5 of Daniel, and he starts drinking out of them, and because of this, God judged him and took away his kingdom. And if we get down here, it says, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar that they clothe Daniel with scarlet and put a gold chain about his neck and proclaim that he should be made the third ruler in the kingdom, And that night Belshazzar, who's the last king of the Chaldean reign, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius, the Median, took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So Darius takes over the kingdom. Now, history will record that Cyrus took over Babylon. So the question is that a different event than this one? Or was Cyrus a co-regent, a co-ruler with Darius? Or is Darius another name for Cyrus? And the next question is, which Darius is it? Because as I mentioned, if we go back to where this prophecy is taking place in Daniel chapter 9, at the end of the 70 years of captivity, one second here. Okay. In the first year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, okay, if we go back to our list of Persian kings here, Darius, who took over the kingdom, there's 3 different Dariuses. There's Darius the first, okay, which is 521 to 486. Darius the second, which is 423 to 405, and Darius the third from 336 to 330, okay. Well, if Darius is the son of Xerxes in Daniel chapter 9 at the end of the captivity, the first Xerxes doesn't appear until after the first Darius. So for Darius to be a descendant of Xerxes, he would have to, and to be a son of in the biblical terms could mean either direct son or mean a grandson or somewhere down the line. Like Jesus was the son of David, doesn't mean he was directly the son of David, but or the son of Adam and so forth. That's the vernacular that they used. For Darius to be a son of Xerxes, it could only be Darius II or Darius III. Okay, it can't be Darius I. That's point number 1. So the second point is that, let me go back to Daniel chapter 9 here. The seed of the Medes, he was made king over the realm of Chaldeans. Okay, well, we read earlier that Darius is the one who took the kingdom from Belshazzar, okay, who was the king of the Chaldeans. So if this particular Darius he's talking about is the one that was made ruler of the king of the Chaldeans, and he's the son of Xerxes, then it must be Darius II or Darius III. It can't be Darius III, because if it was Darius III, there's a whole bunch of series of events that happen after this chapter 9 of Daniel that includes the rebuilding of the temple, the time of Nehemiah, and so forth. And it talks about a lot of this stuff happening during the reign of King Artaxerxes. Well, Darius III is the last Darius before Alexander the Great and the Greeks take over the Medo-Persian kingdom. So there's no Artaxerxes or anything happening after that, so it's too late for that. And I already went over why it can't be Darius I, okay? So it has to be referring to Darius II, because that's the only one that fits in the time frame here. And the Artaxerxes and so forth are after that. Now, when did Darius II rule? 423 to 405, okay, BC. Well, on my chronology, as I was showing earlier, when is the time period that the captivity ends? Around the year 422, around the exact time that Darius comes to power. So again, there's a second confirmation that this is the right time frame, okay? Now, the other confirmations come into the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah, which show that this gets back into the 90-week, the prophecy of the 90 weeks. Okay, we have the 7 sevens, which is a period of 49 years. Okay, and then we have the 62 sevens, which is a period of 483 years. 434 years, and then the last 7, the 49 plus 434 is 483. The last 7 is the last 7th year before the temple is destroyed in Jerusalem. Last 7-year period, excuse me. So getting back to this time frame here, if we look at Ezra and Nehemiah, if we're going to count from roughly around 422, 423 BC, somewhere in there, and we're going to go that first 7, which is 49 years. Okay. So we're going to go. Let's do. We'll do 423 here, because that's what we have listed on. Again, these carry over because the year doesn't start exactly on December, so it could be part of the years in 423 or 422, even 421, depending on which tail end of the year you're working with. So we'll do 423 here, and we're going to subtract 49 years. And that brings us around 374. So if we did 422, we're at 373 BC. Okay, somewhere in that time frame. frame. Okay, is 49 years later. So now 373 BC is during the reign of let's see here, Artaxerxes the second. Okay, so 373, 404 to 373 BC. Okay, so I'll go 404 minus 373. That's roughly 31 years. Could be 32, somewhere in there. Okay. Now here's the point I want to get into with this. In the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah was sent to build the walls around Jerusalem because the walls were cast down and they hadn't been rebuilt. So he's sent to Jerusalem in the 20th year of the reign of Artaxerxes. Which Artaxerxes? That's the question. Well, if it's the Artaxerxes that comes after Darius here, after the captivity is ended, okay, the first one, then his 20th year is roughly 394, around 384, 385, 383, somewhere in there, okay? That's his 20th year. Now it says that he was basically on a 12-year mission. Is how much time he said he gave to Darius and Nehemiah, or excuse me, Artaxerxes and Nehemiah, that he'd be gone doing this. And so we have 20 years from the start of Artaxerxes, and then another roughly 12 years to do his mission of rebuilding these walls. Well, that gives us about 31, 32 years, depending on how quickly he finished it before he had to report back to Darius on his progress. Well, that's a total time frame here, going from, hang on a second here, from 423, okay, minus the 77s, if you follow us here, gives us roughly 374, okay. Now, if we add about 32 years, it's going to be a little less because he probably didn't finish exactly on 32 years. We're getting, or excuse me, 422 we're going to go with. So 422 minus 49. I'll show you why it's 422 in a second here, because the temple was actually not restored to the second year of Darius. 373, we'll add roughly 31 years and change, brings us to 404. That's the start of the reign of Artaxerxes. So that all matches up. 20 years after the end of the reign of Artaxerxes, Nehemiah goes to work on the temple, or work on the walls around the temple in the city of Jerusalem, and then he goes back to report to the king. And then it says at the end of Nehemiah, once he reported back to the king, then he returned again, found out a bunch of stuff was going wrong, like they were keeping people, letting people live in the temple and so forth, and Nehemiah cleaned everything up, and he cleansed the temple. Okay, so this happened around that time frame, 49 years later. So, and Nehemiah was appointed governor of Judea at that time by Artaxerxes. So let's go back to our prophecy now in Daniel and see what it said here about the 70 weeks. Okay, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and the prophecy, as opposed to Revelation where they break the seals, and to anoint the most holy. Okay, the most holy being the temple and so forth. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince, okay, not the king, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, or 7 sevens, which is the 49-year period. Now that's one time frame, but it also says in the streets and the walls will be built again even in troublous times. Well, that's what Nehemiah did. He built the streets and the walls in very troublous times, if you read that book. But she'll be seven weeks, but also 62 weeks. Okay, why say 7 weeks and 62 weeks? You know, why not say 69 weeks instead of 62 and 7? What's the difference there? Well, let's break this down. The 49 years is the time frame that Nehemiah returned in the reign of Artaxerxes to cleanse the temple, to anoint the most holy, to make an end of sin, etc., etc. Okay, but if we go back to Daniel, and instead of counting 49 years out, let's count the 62, okay, which is 434 years. So let's go back to our time frame here. 422 minus 434, which is 62 times 7. that gives us to around, we got to add a year here because there's no year 0. So around 1213 AD. Okay. Well, what takes place at 12 or 13 AD in anywhere in biblical history? Well, that's the only recorded thing we have happening really at that time in the Bible is that when Jesus was about 12 years old, that's when he first visited the temple. That was like his bar mitzvah time, if you will, when he became a man. And he visited the temple, and he was teaching in the temple, and Mary and Joseph couldn't find him. They had to go back to Jerusalem, and he said, "Don't you know I need to be about my Father's business?" That was his first visit, his first time that he was coming back to the temple and started teaching truth with authority was when he was 12 years old. So we have the 62 weeks takes us to the Messiah, Jesus. So we have two versions of the Messiah here. There's the Messiah basically means anointed or the ruler. Okay. Now in both cases they're Messiah the Prince. Jesus was a 12-year-old son at that time. He was the prince, but even in the case of Nehemiah, he was appointed a governor. He wasn't king. Okay. He had some authority, but he wasn't the total authority like the throne of David was. Okay. So 49 sevens from the time of when Daniel's given this prophecy takes us to the time of Nehemiah. But if we also count out 62 sevens, we get to the point of Jesus first entering the temple at age 12. But then if we add those two together, we also get the 77s, which is the total time frame, because that brings us to about the year, we'll do it here real quick. Okay, 42 minus, not 42, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. 422, okay, minus, we're going to do 483 because the last 7-year period we're going to leave out here for a second. That brings us, now you got to add a year here because there's no year 0, so around 62, 63. Well, what happened during this time? Okay, around this time, Josephus records that the work on the construction of Herod's temple, which is a reconstruction of the second temple that King Herod was doing at the time of Jesus. Herod's temple came finally to completion. It took many, many years for them to construct Herod's temple. It actually it started a couple decades before Jesus came, and then it carried on all the way until the early 60s time frame, just before the Jewish revolt. And Josephus records there were two major reasons for the Jewish revolt that basically eventually led to the war that destroyed the temple in 70 AD. One of these was an expectation based on an oracle, as Josephus puts it, that the Messiah was supposed to appear around that time. Well, what oracle or prophet is Josephus referring to that gave a time prophecy that suggested that something to do with the Messiah would happen around that time? Daniel's 70 weeks. So obviously there's another confirmation that suggests that if that was going on around the time of the Jewish revolt and they're counting back the 490 years, that they know that the Daniel's prophecy must have took place around 422 BC. So again, here we have 422 BC is the time of the restoration of the temple and in the captivity. The second reason that Josephus cites for the Jewish revolt, in addition to the harshness in the taxation system of the Romans and the not respecting the Jewish religious practice and so forth, is that Herod's temple finally was completed about that time, okay? And all the workers that have been building this great, massive, huge temple for all these years all suddenly found themselves unemployed. And now you've got a bunch of young people who've been working this whole time. They're out of money. They're unemployed. They're primed for revolt. Okay, so that was the other reason that this happened at this time, because now the workers don't have anything to do with construction anymore. Now, to understand a little bit about Herod's temple and what happened there, the temple that was built, the second temple that was built under the time of Darius, that Daniel's referring to here, that temple was prescribed under a very specific set of statutes handed down by the Persians as to how it should be built. And I'll go to that. You can read about that in Ezra. Okay. So hang on one second here. I'm going to go to Ezra. We'll just go chapter by chapter here. So Ezra. They return from captivity in the first year of Cyrus, and this is why Cyrus has to be either a co-regent or has to be Darius, or has to be Darius's kid. That's the other thing I should bring up too. There's only 3 Cyruses recorded in history. One is a very early Cyrus that really didn't have much to do with the coming of the Persian part of the Medo-Persian Empire, because the Medes ruled for a long time. The Babylonians were ruling everything, but for their realm, the Medes were ruling. And then there was a Cyrus the First, who was within the lineage of the kings of the Persians. And then the Cyrus the Second, known as Cyrus the Great, he's the one that kind of threw off the rule of the Medes and became the ruler of the Medo-Persian Empire. And the Medes actually respected him, and they were kind of co-ruled the empire together. So you had two people. One was of Japheth, the Japhetic line, and the other one was of a Semitic line. That they were intermarried and so forth, and they became basically one nation, and they ruled together as the Medo-Persian Empire. But the Persians really were the ones that dominated it. So Cyrus the Second is the one that history records, is the one that really brought together the Persian Empire, that we know it as in history and its greatness. So anyways, the third Cyrus is Cyrus the Younger, which is recorded in history, and he is the son. Cyrus the Younger is the son of Darius the Second, who would have been around at this time. So the question is, which Cyrus are we talking about here when we're talking about the Cyrus that proclaimed that the temple should be built and so forth? Is it another name for Darius? Is it Darius' son, who was a co-regent with him, which was very common for many kings and their sons to reign together, such as Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, or Nabonidus and Belshazzar, depending on your interpretation? Or was it perhaps Darius was the Median side of the Medo-Persian Empire, and there was another Cyrus who was the Persian side? Is Cyrus another name? For example, Josephus suggests that Artaxerxes, who was Darius' predecessor, went by the name of Cyrus. So is it possible that Artaxerxes was Cyrus? That's something that's still, I think, got to be hashed out a little bit. But one thing that seems to be clear if you begin to read Daniel and Ezra and Nehemiah in detail is that it certainly seems as though this Cyrus that they're referring to and Darius either co-reigned or were right near the same time as each other, and I'll show you why here in a second. In the first chapter of Ezra starts out and says that now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of the Lord came in the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, that the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, the king of Persia, and he made a proclamation about the kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord of heaven has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. So Cyrus is the one that's proclaiming to set the captives free and rebuild the temple. Now again, we just showed that this happens in Daniel at the end of around the year 422, give or take a year. So we know that this proclamation for returning, because Daniel was praying about it, why is the captivity still going on? We know that it couldn't have happened till this point. So whoever the Cyrus is that's referred to here, it has to be a lot later than the Cyrus that was referred to in 539, or possibly history's understanding and recording of those particular characters. They didn't put the jigsaw puzzle together correctly, and they came up with different dates or different Cyruses or whatever. But it seems clear to me that the 539 date has to be wrong, or is not the same Cyrus. Another possibility, too, is that they might be using euphemisms here. For example, it's common in the Bible to use one name to refer to something else, like Mystery Babylon in Revelation, which is not the actual ancient Babylon, because Babylon doesn't exist right now as the ancient city, but there's a Mystery Babylon, or it refers to the place where the Lord was crucified, which is spiritually called Sodom or Egypt. Okay. These are names that don't actually mean this. Others, Jezebel, for example, referred to Jehu as Zimri, the murderer of the master, even though that wasn't his name, because she was trying to make an allusion to Jehu being someone who had rebelled against the king. There's all different kinds of examples where they do this. So one other possibility, another good one is John the Baptist, who is Jesus said is Elijah come, because Elijah must come first. So there are plenty of places in the Bible where we can see that one name is used to mean something else. So that could be true of Nebuchadnezzar. That could be true possibly of Cyrus. It could actually spiritually mean something else, and you're supposed to infer it by studying the text, and you realize, oh, it really means this person. So one of the questions is, could possibly Darius actually be Cyrus? And there is no other Cyrus. Or is there actually a separate Cyrus that co-reigned or was about the same time, and we just haven't really kind of hashed it out yet? There's a lot of possibilities there. One thing I'm pretty sure about is this 422 BC date has to be roughly the time that this is all taking place. So we have Ezra here now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia. He frees them from the captivity. And he brought forth the vessels from the house of the Lord, from Nebuchadnezzar. Now, that's another interesting point. When Darius took over the kingdom from Belshazzar, Belshazzar got in trouble because he had all the vessels out and he was drinking wine out of them. Why did he have all the vessels out? Was it because maybe Cyrus had commanded them to bring forth the vessels at that time? And this is shortly before Darius took over, so maybe roughly about that time is when Cyrus was freeing the captives. That's one possibility. But Darius took over the kingdom that night, and Belshazzar was slain. And so then Darius becomes ruler, or maybe co-ruler with Cyrus. So Cyrus commanded all the vessels of the temple, the dishes and so forth, be brought forth. That are made of silver and gold and everything. And they're going to be restored, and they're going to send the captives back to Judea, and they're going to rebuild the temple under Cyrus's decree. And again, in Daniel chapter 9, it says that at that time the commandment came forth. So we're going to go to the next chapter here. So then we have a list of all the people that basically returned from the captivity at this time, okay, in chapter 2 of Ezra. Now we get to chapter 3 here, and it says, when the 7th month was come, so they're returning from the captivity. Now we're talking about in terms of months here, not years, so it's probably the same year that they left, and it's not that far from Babylon for them to travel over to Judea. But in the 7th month, when the children of Israel were in their cities, and the people gathered themselves together in Jerusalem, then stood Joshua the son of Jozadak, and the priests, and Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel. And Zerubbabel was the governor, and Joshua was the high priest. And his brethren, and they built the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon, as written in the law of Moses. And they set the altar on its bases, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries. So they're afraid of the people of the country. And in some translations, it'll say, despite there being fear of the people of that are around them. Now, why would they be afraid of the people around them for putting the altar on? Well, apparently the people around them didn't want them to do what they're doing here, building the altar, rebuilding the temple, etc. So if they're putting the altar there, despite the fear of the people around them, there must already be some conflict from the people around them, the citizens who were already living in Judea at that time before the captivity returned, that wanted to stop them from doing what they were doing. But despite this, in the 7th month, they are putting the altar on its bases, and they're offering burnt offerings. And so they kept the Feast of the Tabernacles and so forth. And okay, continuing offering. Let's see. For the first day of the 7th month. So now the next year, the 2nd year of their coming to the house of Jerusalem. So they've only been, this is the 2nd year now. They've only been about a year since they returned from the captivity. In the 2nd year of their coming to the house of Jerusalem, in the 2nd month, so remember we went from the 7th month to the 2nd month, okay, so not too long, only about, less than half a year, or around a half year. Then began Zerubbabel and the son of Shealtiel and Joshua the son of Jehozadak and the remnant of the brethren of the priests and all that they were in the captivity of Jerusalem to appoint Levites from 20 years old and upward, which you had to be at least 20 according to King David in order to do temple work, all the way up to age 50. And then to set forward to work on the house of the Lord. So they began in the 2nd month of their 2nd year of returning. Okay, so they've only been out of captivity for about a year, if that. And they began to work on the house of the Lord. Then stood Joshua with his sons and brethren, and let's see. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, remember, we're in the 2nd month of the 2nd year here. When the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, they set the priests in their apparel and their trumpets. Okay, so in the 2nd month of the 2nd year, they laid the foundation. Okay, so it hasn't been that long. All right. Now, if we go back to, let's see here. Now remember in the 7th month they built the altar. Hang on one second. I'm going to pause this 1 second here because I got to look for something. Okay, now the first day of the 7th month. This is the first year they had returned. The first day of the 7th month, when they built the altar, but not the foundation, says they began to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord, but the foundation of the temple was not yet laid. Okay, that didn't happen until the 2nd month of the year after they had returned. So that's an important time frame, and I'll show you why later on. So when they did finally lay the foundation in the 2nd year of their returning, okay. Now read how it describes what happens when the builders laid the foundation. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, they set the priests in the apparel and the trumpets, and the Levites and the sons of Asaph and the cymbals, and to praise the Lord after the ordinance of David, king of Israel. And they sang together in the course of praising and giving thanks to the Lord, because he is good, and his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout and praise in the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. This is the 2nd month, okay, of the 2nd year. But many of the priests and the Levites and the chief of the fathers, who were certain ancient men, okay, that had seen the first temple, the first house of the Lord, when the foundation of the house was laid before their eyes, wept with a loud voice, and many shouted for joy, okay, so that the people could not discern the noise of the joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. The people shouted with loud shout, and the noise was heard afar off. So you had people that were shouting for joy, and you had people that were weeping, who were ancient men who had seen the first temple, and the combination of the two, you couldn't tell which was which. Okay, so what can we see from the scripture? There was a lot of ancient men who had seen the first temple, but they were old. It says they were ancient men. So they have been around. Now, if the captivity lasted 70 years from the time that the temple was destroyed, and these are ancient men, well, let's say they were 5 years old when they saw the temple. That means we're talking about 75-year-olds and up. Okay. Well, if we already showed that we're in the year 422 here on our chart here. Okay. If the conventional reckoning is to suggest that the 539 BC is when the captivity ended under Cyrus. Okay. And here we are at 422 BC. Okay. Plus you got to go back from 539, 70 more years for the captivity, plus another 5 to have the people who are celebrating the foundation being laid old enough to celebrate this. Okay, so let's add that all up. All right, let's go. Let's say this is the way the popular belief system as to how the captivity ended, but this is why I'm going to show you why it's incorrect. So we'll go they believe that the captivity ended in 539 BC. Okay, which means it started in 609 BC. Now let's give 5 years for the age to remember the temple, because younger than that you probably have a hard time remembering if you saw it. So you have to be born in 614 BC or older in order to remember the temple at the time of the foundation being laid. So if this is taking place in 422, okay, that means they would have to be half the crowd or more who are weeping, so many people that you can't tell the difference between the two groups, would have to be about 192 years old or older in order for that to take place. Well, that's a heck of a lot of 192-year-olds, okay? Not to say that there aren't some old age people in the Bible, but most of those are long before this time period. The time period balanced out to 140 years less, 120 years or less, and so forth, long before this time frame. So we're back into normal age times now for life expectancy. So 192 years just can't possibly cut it. Now, most of the way that they try to reconcile this is they try to explain these events taking place roughly around a 70-year period or so after the captivity. Well, that's still 140 years plus 5 years. That means you have a bunch of half the crowd's 145-year-olds. I mean, that doesn't work either. The only possible way that could work here is if the temple was burned in 492. Okay, so we had 5 years so that they can old enough to remember. It says 497. All right. So if this is taking place in the 2nd year of returning the captivities, when that was laid, so we got 5 years plus 70 for the captivity plus 1 year because it's the 2nd year since return. So that's a total of 76 years. So we're going to minus 76 here. Okay. So that gives us 421. That's roughly the time frame of the return. Okay, so a bunch of 75, 76-year-olds or older are in the crowd. Now that's a lot more realistic to suggest that half the crowd is of ancient, called them ancient men, but there was enough of them, 75-plus-year-olds, that they were weeping because they're remembering the old temple, that they offset the noise of the younger crowd who was shouting for joy that you couldn't tell the difference between the two. So there's no way it's possible, in my opinion, that it cannot be anything other but this time frame of 422. Now I'm going to show another reason why it has to be this time frame, and that's because if we go back and look here, it says that I'll fast forward a little bit in the chapters here. We got Ezra chapter 3. All right, so the temple is laid in the second year, and they're shouting for joy. Now what happens in chapter 4 is the people around when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin, that's the people around them, heard that the children of the captivity builded the temple of the Lord God of Israel, so they just started building it. Then they came to Zerubbabel, who's the governor, and the chief of the fathers, and said to him, "Let us build with you, okay? For we seek your God as you do. We sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, the king of Ashur had brought us up hither." So what happened was the kingdom of Israel was there was a civil war in ancient Israel, and the tribes of Israel were divided into two kingdoms. You had the southern kingdom, which was Judah and Benjamin, and then the Levites. And then you had the northern kingdom, which was also some of the Levites, and then the 10 northern tribes. Okay, so you had these two kingdoms that kind of they warred, but they had peace, and they were kind of on and off, kept a cohesive nation, if you will, for the duration of the time after the reign of Solomon, who built the temple. So for most of the temple history, they're divided between these two kingdoms. Okay, well, what happened was a certain time, few generations before, the southern kingdoms were taken to Babylon into captivity. The northern kingdoms had been captured by the Assyrians and were hauled off into captivity into Assyria. Okay, the Assyrians later then were taken over by Babylon, and then the Babylonians were later taken over by the Persians, who let the captivities of the southern kingdom go. So what had happened was, at the time that the northern tribes were taken over, the Assyrians had brought forth this king Esarhaddon, king of Ashur. He had brought up a bunch of people to occupy the land of Judea. Okay, and they were worshiping kind of the Semitic type god, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they believed that was the God of the area. But it wasn't the same thing as the Israelites. Okay, and these became what's today called the Samaritans. They were kind of half bred into Israelites, but not really the northern tribes. Okay, these are the Samaritans. They're kin, and they'd still keep a Jewish. That's where the Samaritan text, when I talk about the Masoretic, the Septuagint, and the Samaritan text, they keep the Samaritan text, and they actually have their own holy mountain, which is Mount Gerizim, as opposed to Mount Zion. But they're the northern part of Israel. But they were considered adversaries to the southern part, and they were looked down upon by the tribes of Israel, Judah and Benjamin, and the Levites that had returned from captivity from Babylon. Okay, so these are the people that are saying, "Hey, we've been worshiping the same gods you do since we were brought here from Assyria, from the king of Ashur." But Zerubbabel, who's the governor, and Joshua the high priest, and the rest of them, and the fathers of Israel, says, "You have nothing to do with us to build the house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as Cyrus the king of Persia had commanded us." At this point in time, the Samaritans began to plot how they're going to stop this temple from being built, and probably because it was competition maybe with their temple in the north. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they'd have been adversaries to the people in the south. They didn't like them coming into their land, which they believe had been given to them from the Assyrians. It could be a whole bunch of different reasons, but there was tension there. So then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building. And they hired counselors against them to frustrate them all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even unto the reign of Darius, king of Persia. Well, again, the question is, which Darius? Okay, well, we've got, let's go back to our list of emperors here. Okay, so we've already established that Cyrus is the one who set him free, and Cyrus has to be around this time. Cyrus might have predated Darius by just a little bit. I mean, if there was a Cyrus, or there could be a different title that was inherited, because sometimes when kings would take over a nation, they would inherit the title. Like, for example, Caesar is a title, okay? But Caesar was a person. Julius Caesar and so forth, that was a family name, but the name became so feared and renowned and respected that it became a title that people began to adopt, because when you're dealing with people in ancient times who are illiterate, and they say, hey, Caesar is going to come get you, they know what that means. But if a new king comes to town and they don't know who it is, why should they respect him? So the name was very important. Okay, so when the rulers would come along and they would adopt a name, that name allowed them to rule. So they would oftentimes adopt, you take a title or name like Caesar, Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus, etc., or Darius, and they still do that even in the modern times. When a pope becomes a pope, he takes on a certain name. When it's a tradition, when a king becomes a king, like in England, King George III, etc., they would take on a throne name to establish a certain name as opposed to their birth name. But names are often handed down as titles. So we have Darius, the king, Darius the Great. Let's see here. Where was I? I was, okay, the people threaten the reign of Osiris. Okay, so the people began to resist them all the days from the days of Cyrus to the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. So we were going to look at which Darius were we talking about here. So, well, we already established that this started at least around the time of the second Darius, which was Darius II of Persia around 423 to 405, well, the beginning of his reign. Okay, so if Cyrus is a co-regent of him, or possibly just a little bit earlier, as I mentioned with the case of Belshazzar, with them having the temple utensils out, or even if Cyrus was another throne name of Darius, or if it was a son, possibly, perhaps Cyrus was given certain accolades as being a prince, of having better heritage than Darius himself was, and there's all different kind of possibilities it could be. But it can't be too long a time frame if it's the time frames from Cyrus to Darius II of Persia, because we're already basically in the reign of Darius II of Persia. So if there is a Cyrus in here and it goes from Cyrus to Darius, it must be a very short time frame, maybe in a couple years or even months that we're talking about for this reign of Cyrus. I believe it's about 3 years, but I'll go into that in a second. So anyways, so Darius II, that's one possibility. Or the second possibility is they're talking about they resisted him all the way to the reign of Darius III, which was the last Persian emperor before the Greeks came in under Alexander and took over the region, which is a possibility too, because we do have during the time of Artaxerxes, even though they built the temple earlier, they had to come back and build the walls to protect the temple. That happened during the time of Artaxerxes, and they were certainly resisting them during that time too. So they could have been basically opposing all the construction, building of Jerusalem, everything throughout this entire time period. Or this could just be referring to a specific time period here from Cyrus, who might possibly be Darius here, to the second year of the reign of Darius, or from, if Cyrus is Darius, from this Darius to this Darius for basically the remainder of the Persian Empire. So there's a couple possibilities there. But let's explore the first one. Let's say it's from to the second year of the reign of Darius II. Okay. So now when the adversaries of Judah, okay, let's see. And the people of the land weakened their hands of building Judah, and they hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, even into the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. Let's assume for a second that it's the second Darius, not the third one. Okay. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes, okay, at the beginning of his reign, they wrote unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah, Jerusalem. And in the days of Artaxerxes, wrote Islam, etc., etc. Okay, so they're hiring counselors. Well, what are counselors? Well, the kings had counselors around them to help them govern. Okay, you can almost think of them kind of as lobbyists, if you will. So they're hiring counselors against them. They're basically greasing the wheels with the king's confidants to speak against the building and the construction of Jerusalem. Okay, to frustrate them all the days of King Cyrus, even to the days of King Darius. So that's one way they're trying to address it. The second thing they're doing is they're writing letters. Now, if you understand how the Persian Empire worked, one of the things, even though the Persian Empire is a very, very wide empire, I mean, it went all the way from India all the way over to Egypt. One of the reasons why it was so successful was because the Persians built roads, and they had one of the best postal systems that you could possibly imagine. It only took a matter of days or weeks to transverse the whole entirety of the empire. I mean, it was, if you think of the baton race, where you hand off the baton from one to the next, it was kind of a Pony Express type system where messages could travel back and forth very quickly throughout the Persian Empire, and this is what helped them govern and helped them maintain the largeness of their empire and be successful for so long. The Romans, too, later on adopted this when they had the idea of the Roman road and all roads lead to Rome. It was the ability of the Romans to, and the quality of their road system, to be able to show up with their army anywhere on a moment's notice very quickly to put down rebellions that allowed them to govern so well as well. But the Persians were the first one that really kind of pioneered this road system. So they're writing letters back and forth to the Persian capitals, and the Persian capitals were Ecbatana and Shushan, and in Babylon, when they took over Babylon as well. They write letters to the kings. Now, during this time frame, they wrote to Cyrus. Obviously issued the decree, so it'd be kind of pointless to write to Cyrus. But they wrote to Ahasuerus at the beginning of his reign, and they wrote to Artaxerxes. Now, Ahasuerus never responds, according to this, but Artaxerxes does respond, and Artaxerxes actually tries to put a stop to things once he reads the letter. Well, let's go back and look at our list here for Ahasuerus, who is Xerxes, and Artaxerxes, okay? Well, if we look here, if Cyrus is around this time, okay, there is a Xerxes that's just before Darius, which is in this time frame, which is Xerxes II, so that's one possibility. The other possibility is that, sorry, my cat was doing something here. The other possibility is, okay, so we got Xerxes II, Xerxes I, but we can't go with Xerxes I because Xerxes I predates, I mean, he's already at 485 to 465, okay? So that's long before the 422 date, which we established, all right? So we have to go with Xerxes II, okay? But Xerxes II is only there for 424. Well, what happened at this time, if you read the history of the Persians at this time, when Artaxerxes died, okay, these three guys are brothers. They're half brothers basically, and they all kind of claimed the throne at the same time, and because they wanted to be the heir to Artaxerxes and the emperor. Well, what happened was Xerxes II was the first to reign, and Sogdianus tried to usurp him and had him killed, and then he himself was led into captivity and was killed not long later. And then Darius ended up being the one who finally became the final king. So there was a little bit of a struggle here between these three as to who would get the throne, okay? So now if you understand what's going on here in respect to Artaxerxes dying and his three sons trying to take the throne, now it makes a little more sense what's going on here, because first, Cyrus is the one who issued the decree, and it's possible that Artaxerxes himself might be the Cyrus they're referred to too, because Josephus suggests that that's the case. But Josephus is many years after the fact. So anyways, Cyrus issues a decree, and they write a letter then to Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes, okay? But it never says anything here about Xerxes responding. Well, the letters travel very fast in the Persian Empire. It shouldn't take long to get a response, but he never responds. Well, Xerxes II, if this is that Ahasuerus, since he was killed so quickly by Sogdianus, it would make sense that he wouldn't respond. He was king for a very, very short time, probably within a month or less. Okay. And then in the days of Artaxerxes, now there's two possibilities for Artaxerxes here. One is that possibly they're backtracking a little bit, okay, and they're talking about Artaxerxes I as being one of the people, or possibly Sogdianus maybe is that's the throne name, if you will, for Sogdianus, possibly, and it just didn't get recorded in history because the reign is so short. I tend to think that they're actually talking about Artaxerxes here, that they're backtracking and saying, because Cyrus could have been in the last year of the reign of Artaxerxes, because it says that they troubled the building of the temple from the reign of Cyrus all the way to the reign of Darius. Well, if Darius II is the king of Persia that took over from Belshazzar, then it's possible that Cyrus started his reign at the start of the release of the captivity was actually the last year of Artaxerxes, and then it was the second year of Darius that the temple was actually started to be built again. Okay, so if you're following this here, it's a little confusing, but I'll try to get a little more detail so you can understand it. So if Artaxerxes is if they're backtracking, they wrote a letter to Artaxerxes, he didn't respond, but they also wrote a letter to Artaxerxes before he passed away. It's possible these three were vying for the throne in the last days of Artaxerxes. In other words, he's on his deathbed or he's getting sick, and they're already naming the successors. So around this time frame, you could have actually had multiple kings, more than one king of the Babylonian Empire, because they could have been co-regents at this time, again, because they're sons. It's very common. A lot of things could have been going on here, but if we go back here again, it says, in the reign of Artaxerxes, at the beginning of his reign, they wrote on him an accusation, and Artaxerxes, we have no response to him. But in the days of Artaxerxes, it says that Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabeel, and the rest of the companions unto Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, and the writing of the letter was in the Syrian tongue, and the interpretation was in the Syrian tongue. Now, Mithridath, earlier, is listed as the treasurer of the Persian Empire, who's keeping track of the treasury in Babylon. Okay, and Cyrus commanded that Mithridath bring forth the temple treasures so that those in captivity, when they go back to Judea, will be able to restore them to the temple. So Mithridath is one of the people that's complaining about what's going on in them rebuilding the temple. Okay, so Mithridath, as I said, is the treasurer. So Mithridath, why would Mithridath be over in Judea? He's the treasurer for Babylon, keeping track of all the treasures and for the Persian Empire in Babylon. So Mithridath, when is Mithridath going to complain about what's going on here? Well, he's probably going to complain when he gets the order from having to take all the treasures out of the temple to give back to the Jews to take back to Judea. Okay, so if this declaration by Cyrus to return all the temple treasures and rebuild the temple happens before the reign of Darius, then that means that this probably happened, Mithridath and his complaining probably happened while the captives were still in Babylon, or shortly thereafter when they were just having left to go to Judea to rebuild the temple, which again would have been around the last year of the reign of Artaxerxes or somewhere thereabouts. So that would make sense in talking about in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabeel, etc., because this probably was about the time that they were about ready to leave and take the temple treasures that Mithridath probably didn't want to part ways with. Okay, so Artaxerxes and the king of Persia, and the writing of his letter was in the Syrian tongue, interpreting the Syrian language, because that area that they'd taken over originally was part of the Syrian Empire. Then the Babylonians took it over, and then the Persians took it over. Okay, so and then now on the other side of the river in Judea, we have Rehum the chancellor and Shimshai the scribe. They wrote a letter against Jerusalem and Artaxerxes and the king of this sort. So either the Israelites are about to come over there, or they're just recently returned over there. But the people on that side of the river are complaining about it too. And this is all probably happening because Cyrus issued this decree throughout the entire empire. And when they issued the decree, that's probably when the resistance really started on both the people in Judea who heard what was going to happen, the people in Babylon who didn't like it. About that time is when they really began the complaining, and that progressed all the way up till the reign of Darius, when the temple was actually physically starting to be rebuilt. Okay, so then wrote Rehum the chancellor and Shimshai the scribe and the rest of the companions and so forth. And the rest of the nations and the great, which the Assyrian king had brought them over into Samaria. This is the copy of the letter that they wrote. Be it known to the king that the Jews which came up from thee to us. Okay, so the Jews are over there when the people on the the Judea side of the Euphrates River are writing this letter to Artaxerxes. Be known to the king that the Jews which came up from us, so if they came up from Artaxerxes, okay, that would suggest that this happened just shortly before Darius became emperor. Probably in the last year of the reign of Artaxerxes is when this decree was made to issue to release the captives, because they came up from Artaxerxes. Now remember, it was Darius that took over the Babylonian Empire from Belshazzar. Okay, so the decree probably came from Artaxerxes at the time of his reign, just in the last year, is when they were warring against Babylon, and it says that Darius was made king of the Chaldeans, or he was given the empire. So perhaps Darius, as one of the crown princes, was handed the king by Cyrus or Artaxerxes, as opposed to him taking it himself. Okay, that's one possibility. So, be known to the king of the Jews, which came up to us from Jerusalem, are building the rebellious city that is, and they're writing to Artaxerxes here, and has set up the walls thereof and joined the foundations. So they said they're building the rebellious city. Doesn't say anything about the temple. Now, the first thing that they did when they gathered together in the 7th month is that they were gathered together in their cities. So what happened is, the first thing they probably did when they got over there is they had to live somewhere, so they began to build their houses. So what they're talking about here is that they're building the rebellious and bad city. It's not mentioning the temple, because remember, Cyrus had ordered that the temple be rebuilt. So what are they complaining about? They're saying, well, hey, Cyrus ordered the Jews to come over here and build a temple. Okay, that's one thing. But they're not building a temple. They're building houses and stuff. They're building a city. Okay, and that city has a reputation. It says that they're building the rebellious and the bad city and set up the walls thereof and join the foundations. Be it known unto the king that the city if this city be built and the walls set up again, that he shall not, that they will not pay toll, tribute, or custom. They're not going to pay taxes, and so shalt and damage the revenue of the kings. Now because we have maintenance from the king's palace, it was not meet for us to see the king's dishonor. Therefore we've sent and certified to the king that the search be made of the book of the record of the fathers, so shalt thou find in the records, and know that the city is a rebellious city, and hurtful to kings and provinces, and that they have moved sedition within the same of old time, and for which cause the city was destroyed. So they're complaining, saying, hey, don't build the city. The city has rebelled in the past. It's going to create you problems. Artaxerxes, you don't want this to happen. So Artaxerxes does a search of the records, and he finds out, yes, this is true. And he sends a letter back. And he says, okay, as I commanded, a search was made, and I found that the city of old time hath made insurrection against kings, and that the rebellion of sedition has been made therein, and that there have been mighty kings over Jerusalem, which have ruled over all the countries and over all the river, and the toll and the tribute was paid unto them. Give me now a commandment to cause these men to cease, that the city not be built, until another commandment should come from me. Okay, so Artaxerxes is saying, don't build the city until another commandment comes from me. Now remember, Cyrus had said, go over there and build a temple. Now, these are two different things here. He's saying, put a stop to them from building the city. Okay. Now take heed that ye fail not to do this. Why should the damage grow to the hurt of the kings? Now when the copy of Artaxerxes, the letter, was read before Rehum and Shimshai the scribe and their companions, they went up with haste to Jerusalem unto the Jews, and made them cease by force of power. Then ceased work on the house of God, which is in Jerusalem, so it ceased unto the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. Now remember, this is Darius too, because that's when the temple was started. So they got into town. And if you remember back originally, it said that when they built the altar, they did it despite of, or even though there was fear of all the people around them. So what's the picture we're getting here? They wrote a letter to Artaxerxes. They said, hey, the Jews have come back. They're building the city. Artaxerxes says, no. You can stop them from building the city. They go there. They stop them from building the city. But not only did the Jews stop building the city, they stopped building the temple. They stopped building everything because they're afraid. But they do go and put the altar on, even though they're afraid of the people around them. Okay, so now you're starting to see the pattern, the time frame here. Okay. But they stop. That's all they do. They put the altar on. They start giving sacrifices, but they don't do anything more until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius. Okay, so now we're going to get into Ezra chapter 5 here. It says, then the prophets Haggai and the prophet Zechariah son of Iddo prophesied unto the Jews which were in Judea in the name of God of Israel, even to them, and rose up Zerubbabel and Shealtiel, Joshua and Josedek, and began to build the house of God which is in Jerusalem, and with them were the prophets of God telling them. Okay, when did they start building the house of God in Jerusalem? They started in the second year of the reign of Darius. Okay, so Haggai and Zechariah are the ones that are stirring them up to build the house of God in Jerusalem. This must be the second year of Darius that these prophets are proclaiming and stirring up the people. And this is only the second year that they return from captivity. Okay. So then comes Tatnai, the governor on this side of the river, which is probably the Sumerian governor and so forth, and Seth-Boznai and their companions, and saith unto them, Who hath commanded you to build this house and to make up this wall? Now he's talking about the house. He's talking about the temple. He's saying, who commanded you to build this temple? Because remember, they just got told they can't build a city. Okay. So they said, we said to them under this matter, what are the names of the men that make this building, etc. And they said, by the eye of their God and upon their elders of the Jews, that they could not cause them to cease till the matter came to Darius. So again, they're starting to build in the second year of the reign of Darius now, which is shortly after Cyrus and Artaxerxes have passed this whole. Let's get back to the timeline here. Artaxerxes and the struggle here all happened around 424, 423, 422 in that time frame. Okay, so Artaxerxes dies. Xerxes, which is Ahasuerus, dies. Sogdianus goes into flees. He dies. Darius takes over. Okay, Darius becomes king. This all happens within a very, very short time frame, and then Darius becomes the emperor, and in the second year is when they start building the temple again. Okay, so now you kind of got the time frame here. All right, so they would not stop building the temple because Haggai and Zechariah were prophesying to him and stirring him on. They wouldn't stop building the temple until the matter came before Darius. Now remember, when they written the letters to stop them from building, they had written to Xerxes, Ahasuerus, who never responded because he was killed pretty quickly by Sogdianus. They had written to Artaxerxes originally, and Artaxerxes made them stop building the city. Okay, and again, this probably all happened within like a month that all these kings and so forth died, and I'll show you why later on. And then even though they couldn't build a city, they stopped building the temple. But then in the second year, the prophets Haggai and Zechariah stir them up, and they start building the temple. The people come say, "Hey, what are you doing? You just got told you to not stop. You can't be building this stuff." And they said, "Well, let's take it to Darius," because Darius was someone who was not written to yet. Cyrus had made a ruling. Artaxerxes had made a ruling. Xerxes was written to, but he never replied because he's dead. And Darius had not been written to yet. So they said, "Okay, well, Darius is king now, so let's write to Darius." Okay. So they wouldn't stop until the letter came to Darius. All right. So now Darius, they wrote a letter to him. And they basically explained what had happened in Jewish history and so forth. And they said, "In the vessels of the gold and silver, the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of Jerusalem and brought into Babylon, those did Cyrus the king take out of the temple, and they were delivered unto one whose name was Sheshbazzar, whom he made governor." And they said unto him, now that's another reason why Tatiana might be governor. It's possible that with the advent of the new king, maybe Cyrus is governor, Sheshbazzar was replaced by Tatiana. Or it's possible that that he was the northern governor of Samaria. Anyways, so Sheshbazzar was made governor, and it said unto him, "Take the vessels, go carry them unto the temple that is in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be built in its place." And then came Sheshbazzar and laid the foundation. Okay, then came Sheshbazzar and laid the foundation of the house of God. Now, when was the foundation laid? It was laid in the second month of the second year of Darius. Then came Sheshbazzar and laid the foundation of the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. And since that time, even until now, it has been builded and has not yet finished. So the foundation was laid in the second month. Haggai and Zechariah are prophesying. So we know this letter to Darius has to be written after at least the second month of the second year of his reign. Okay, so it's towards the end of his reign, or middle or somewhere, but it has to be after the second month. Okay, now letters transfer real quickly in ancient Persia, so this can all happen in a very short period of time. Now therefore it seemed good to the king, let there be a search made of the king's treasure house which is in Babylon, whether it be so that a decree was made by Cyrus and the king and the house of God in Jerusalem, and let the king send his pleasure concerning this matter. Now you can understand, if you just went through a bunch of kings all fighting for each other. You can understand why there's a little bit of confusion as to who said what and what the correct doctrine is. Now, why this is important is because in the Persian Empire, there was a standing rule that was part of their authority that was well known, is that when a Persian king proclaims something, it cannot be rescinded. And they were caught out all the time on this. That's why Daniel ended up in the lion's den, because when a proclamation was made that no one would pray or beseech a god for 30 days, when the emperor, when Darius had heard that Daniel had prayed, he didn't want to throw Daniel in the lion den, and he's the emperor, okay? But because of this idea in the Persian system that once you make a proclamation, it cannot be rescinded, okay, there was nothing Darius could do. He couldn't get out of it, so he had to throw Daniel in the lion's den, but Daniel survived, okay, and he was brought out of the lion's den. This, by the way, is prophetic of Christ, because Christ died, and then 3 days later he was brought out of the earth, okay? He fulfilled the law. He didn't do away with the law. He fulfilled the law. The law couldn't be done away with. So, but despite that, God still found a way to bring salvation, yet fulfill the law at the same time. And what the enemies of God, and the enemies of Daniel in this case, had thought that would be to their advantage, actually got turned around upon them, and God found a way out, because God was able to keep the law and yet bring salvation despite their ploy, if you will. And of course, in the case of Daniel in the lion den, the enemies that tried to have Daniel thrown in, they themselves were thrown in and torn apart, even though Daniel was spared. So now we're going to go forward a little bit here. So here we have Darius is searching the records and trying to find out, did Cyrus really say this? Because if Cyrus said this and a king of Persia said this, then it has to be so. Okay. So now we got a problem. Okay. Because on the one hand, you got Artaxerxes, who said, hey, don't build, stop building, can't build a city, okay? But then you got Cyrus, who says you're there because you're supposed to build, okay? But the law in Persia says that you cannot, once the emperor pronounces something, it can't be changed. It stands forever. So how can you build and not build? Well, here's how the distinction came in. Artaxerxes said, don't build the city, okay? Cyrus said, build the temple. There's the difference. So what they ended up the conclusion they came to is that it wasn't a violation if they were there to build the temple, so long as they didn't rebuild the city of Jerusalem. And this comes into play later on, because later on, years later, when Nehemiah shows up, the city is still torn down. Okay, Ezra's there. They're doing temple stuff, but the city, the walls and everything are torn down. So what have they been doing for the last 49 years since the return of the captivity? They built the temple and they were worshiping the temple, but they had not built the city because they kept Cyrus's decree, but they also kept Darius's decree by not building the city. So there's the distinction. All right, so Darius, again, we're in the second year of Darius here. Darius made the king made a decree, and search was made of the house rolls that the treasures were laid up in Babylon, and there was found in Achmetha in the palace, which is of the Medes, a roll that was recorded thus written in the first year of Cyrus, the same king Cyrus. This is another reason why Darius might be Cyrus, because it says the first year of Cyrus, the same king Cyrus. Does that mean referring to Darius being Cyrus, or is it referring back to in the first year of Darius, this same Darius, the first year of Cyrus, the same Cyrus made this decree? You know, that's a question of how you read the text. So the king made a decree concerning the house of God in Jerusalem, said, let it be builded, the house of God in Jerusalem, not the city. Let it be builded in the place where they offer sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid. The foundations thereof be laid, and the height thereof shall be 60. Now this is important, because this has to do with Herod's temple. It said, and the height thereof shall be 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof shall be 60 cubits. Okay, not very big by like the seven wonders of the ancient world kind of standards. A cubit was roughly 18 inches, or about the length of your forearm. So 90 cubits. So I mean, it's a large building, but it's not grandiose, okay? But anyway, so 90 cubits by 90 cubits. Now, why this is important is because this is a decree by the king. And the throne of David had never really truly been reclaimed from the return of the captivity. The Jews were there, and they had governors like Zerubbabel and Nehemiah, but those weren't kings. The emperor was the Persians, who then were later handed over by the Greeks, who then later were inherited by the Romans. That the king of the world, the king of kings, as the Persians called them their emperors, that went through that Babylonian line. Now, of course, Christ later became the King of Kings, and he took over, but he fulfilled the law, whereas nobody up to that point had done so. But the law here handed down and placed upon the proclamation of Cyrus says that they had to keep these certain dimensions for the temple. Okay, 90 cubits by 90 cubits and so forth. Remember, a Persian law by Persian emperor cannot be rescinded once it's given. It has to stay. Okay. Well, many years later, what did Herod do? Herod looks at this temple and says, boy, this is a tiny temple, etc., etc. He's full of pride. He wants something gigantic and glorious and large and everything else. So what is he going to do? He's going to go tear down the temple and build a whole brand new temple that's huge and luxurious and everything else, and a total, a worshiping luxury and wealth and everything. And that's completely opposite of the what God is trying to present with the temple and being a house of prayer. And yet Herod and the people those days made it a den of thieves. Okay, and to try to draw people and more money and everything else. Okay, so Herod was going to tear down the temple that they're building here, and he was going to build it to different heights and dimensions that were not prescribed by Cyrus, and that law could not be changed. Okay, so Herod violated that law. Now, the way Herod did this is because he couldn't tear down the temple because that would avoid worship, and the Levitical priests opposed this. This is again in Jesus' time. So Herod made an agreement with them. He said, "Here's what I'll do." This is according to Josephus. He was going to build the temple around and over the original temple that was built from the return of the captivity. Okay, and then once that was completed, then he would tear down the inner temple, and then the worship will continue around the outer temple. Now, I think that this is somewhat emblematic of the abomination that causes desolation. It's emblematic of a siege, of surrounding the temple of God and then tearing it down. So, we talk about restoring the third temple. There was a third temple. It was Herod's temple. Because Herod's third temple was overshadowed the original temple that was built by the captives, and it was torn down. Now, why this is important, you'll find out here in a second when we talk about the reply given by Darius. Okay. So Darius says, and remember, by the way, as I said, that finished completion project with the temple that happened around the 60s at the end of the 483 year period. That's when finally the temple was completed, and it was okay to tear down the original temple thereabouts. By the way, and that's also was Jesus rebuking them? He said, "Tear down this temple, and I'll rebuild it in 3 days." It's kind of a little bit of illusion, also, not only to himself being the temple and being raised in 3 days from the earth, but also the fact that they're tearing down God's ordained temple to build their luxurious Herodian temple. Okay, so anyways. And that also is prophetic too, because it's if a day is as 1,000 years, we're coming upon the third day. So if they're looking to rebuild the temple and the nation of Israel is being restored, there's a possibility that the physical temple will be rebuilt in 3 days. That's again Bible prophecy taking place in modern times. All right, so what we have here is Darius's reply to them saying, "Hey, what's going on here? Should they be rebuilding the temple or not?" So Darius searched the records and to see if Cyrus had in fact told them to do that, to build the temple. And it says, so with Cyrus, the same Cyrus king made a decree concerning the house of Jerusalem, let it be builded, and the foundations, the height, and so forth, 90 cubits, or 60 cubits. 3 scores would be 24, 30, be 60 cubits, not 90. 3 score, 20, 40, 60 cubits, so that 90 feet approximately, 90 feet by 90 feet. Okay, and the walls with great stones, and a row of new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house, and also let the gold and silver vessels of the house of God Nebuchadnezzar be brought forth. Okay. Now this is Darius speaking, and he's speaking to the governor who had written them and saying, "Hey, what should we do?" Who's Tatnai. Now therefore, Tatnai, governor beyond the river, and Shethar-Boznai, and your companions of the Arphaxites that are beyond the river, be ye far thence. Let the work of the house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build the house of God in this place. Moreover, I make a decree. Now this gets important here. Moreover, I make a decree that ye shall do to the elders of the Jews for the building of this house of God, and to the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river, forthwith expenses to be given unto these men, and that they shall not be hindered. Okay, and so they have to support them. All right, and that which they have need of both young men, bullocks, rams, lambs, burnt offerings, etc., give it to them by each day without fail. Okay, so they're going to continue to contribute to them, that they may offer sacrifices. And now Darius continues, and he adds on to this, and he says, "And I have also made a decree that whosoever shall alter this word," okay, remember the words of the Persian kings cannot be altered or rescinded. "I shall make a decree that whosoever shall alter this word, let the timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon. And let this house be made a dunghill for this." Now, who altered the word? Jesus said, "Let this temple be torn down, and I will rebuild it in 3 days." He was talking about himself, but it was also potentially analogous of what they were doing with Herod in terms of tearing down the inner temple. And so, whose house was that? Ultimately, it's God's house. It belongs to Jesus. Only God can rescind that word. So if God says tear down this temple, okay, and the proclamation was that whosoever shall tear it down, let the timber be pulled down from his house, and let it be set up, and let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill. Okay, well, if Herod proclaimed that the temple be torn down, and the Israelites that David proclaimed that the temple be torn down, what happened to their temple? In 70 AD, it was destroyed. It was made a heap of ruins, a dunghill, if you will. Okay, if it's God's house and He proclaims that it be torn down, okay, in Jesus' time, and He fulfilled the law, and it was necessary that that temple be torn down, so that God could dwell in the hearts of men and not in brick and stone. Okay, Jesus came to fulfill the law, not to do away with the law. And if the law says that He needs to be hanged on the cross, even though He's innocent, He's fulfilling the law. You understand? And this was all prophesied years and years in advance. So Jesus is dying for our sins, but He's doing it so that God could dwell, Emmanuel, with us in our hearts, as opposed to in a house made of brick and stone. Okay? And the temple, the veil, the temple was torn in two, and all showing that had been changed so that God could now dwell amongst men, and is kept alive in Christians and Christian hearts everywhere before the physical return of Christ, which happens shortly at the beginning of His 1,000-year reign. Okay, so let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill for this. So we know where the cross, the timbers for the cross probably came from. It probably came from the temple, which was probably being torn down around the time, around 33 AD or thereabouts, just shortly before, around the time that the temple was finished. And it also shows the Jewish nation was wiped out around that time too, and the Romans came in and they probably crucified a lot of people in 70 AD when they captured them, and slaughtered a whole bunch more. Let's see. Okay, and so and then it goes on further. Darius goes on further. Says, "And the God that had caused His name to dwell there, destroy the king and the people." And again, this happened to Israel in 70 AD. "Destroy all kings and people that shall put to their hand to alter and destroy this house of God which is in Jerusalem. And I, Darius, have made a decree to let it be done with speed." So again, that prophecy came to fulfillment in 70 AD because they tore down the original captivity temple, and the kings and the people were also destroyed between the years of 66 all the way up to year 135 with the Bar Kokhba revolt, and only a remnant was sold into bondage and slavery into the diaspora for the next 2,000 years before finally they're restored to be a nation again in the year 1948. So anyways, okay, so now we go to then Tatnan the governor and Sheshbazzar, excuse me, his companions, according to that which Darius the king had sent, so they did speedily. So now they're helping the Jews, and now they're rebuilding the temple. And then and the elders of the Jews built it, and they prospered by the prophesying of Haggai and prophet Zechariah son of Iddo, and they built it and they finished it according to the commandment of God of Israel, and according to the commandments, they built it according to the commandment of God of Israel, and according to the commands of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. Okay, Cyrus said, "Let the house be built." Darius added on and say, let it be built, and also anyone who tears it down, he's gonna hang on a cross and destroy them. And then Artaxerxes says, only build the city, or only you cannot build the city. Okay, that was Artaxerxes' decree. So they built the temple, but they didn't build the city. All right. So now they kept it that way from all the way from the second year of Darius all the way until Nehemiah shows up in the later reign of Artaxerxes, the other Artaxerxes, and at that point in time, that Artaxerxes issues a command that says to Nehemiah, that says, okay, you can go build the walls. Well, what did Artaxerxes say in his original decree? He said, do not build the city until you should hear another command from me. Well, later on, Artaxerxes, another Artaxerxes, but who inherited the title of the king, Artaxerxes, gave the command to Nehemiah to rebuild the walls. So that was okay, because that was Artaxerxes' original decree, not to build it until you should hear another command from me. So the inheritor of him was able to, of the title Artaxerxes, was able to rescind that. And that didn't conflict with the Persian idea of not violating their commands, because they left that caveat in there when they made the command. Okay, so, and the house was finished on the third day of the month of Adar, which is the 6th year of the reign of Darius. So, going back to our time frame here. So we got Darius, king of Persia, Artaxerxes. So Darius, so about 422, so about 418, because they started in the second year, so about 418, roughly there, about give or take year. That's about when the house was finished. Okay. So it wouldn't take them that long. The idea that it took them, 70 years or something like that to finish it from the time they were working on it, it wasn't that large of a house, and there were thousands of people that returned from captivity, and they had the commandment of the kings to help them and all the resources and so forth. It certainly wouldn't have taken decades to build that house. 4 years seems appropriate time when you consider the amount of workers that they had. So now we get down to Ezra shows up after that period. Okay, if you continue on to the next chapters, and then Ezra is in the reign of Artaxerxes, which is Artaxerxes the second. Okay, so Ezra shows up during the reign of Artaxerxes, and at this time in the book of Ezra, the temple is built and they're continuing to practice. Now the city's not built yet. It is until the 20th year of Artaxerxes II that Nehemiah shows up, and he begins to build the walls around the city because he has a new commandment from Artaxerxes. And then he does that for about 12 years, and then he goes back to Artaxerxes to report to him, and then he comes back and he cleanses the temple. And this is what was prophesied in Daniel for their the 49-year period, the first 7 of sevens. And then it says that the wall will be built in the streets in troublous times. And then after 62 years, that the anointing, or 62 sevens, excuse me, from that point that the anointing would be cut off, which took place because they tore down the original temple, the Holy of Holies that was anointed, and that they had Herod's temple, and then the people that would come would destroy the city and the sanctuary. The people of the prince that would come would destroy the city and the sanctuary, which is the Romans. And so that time period, which brings us around 62, 63, was 7 years before the temple was actually destroyed. And it says he'll confirm a covenant with many, and midway through that he'll cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Well, it's about halfway through that 7-year period that the Jewish revolt began. And one of the things they did is they stopped giving sacrifices for Caesar, which was one of the causes of Caesar to respond and to quellish this revolt. And this happened around 66 in that area. So that's halfway through the 7-year period. And then Herod, of course, confirmed a covenant with many at the beginning of the 7th year period in terms of tearing down the temple and completing his temple that he had built, which has put a lot of people out of work, which made it ripe for revolt. So the whole prophecy of the 70 weeks kind of perfectly fits in there, exactly what they're saying. Again, this was recorded long before, and we still have the ancient texts that predate 70 AD and all this happening. So that brings us to that. Now the last thing I want to touch on here was Haggai and Zechariah, who was prophesying during this time. So let me kind of go there and give you the dates for that real quick. The important one really is Haggai, but he's the one that stirred him up to get him to start working again. So it says, in the second year of Darius the king, again, they're starting reconstruction in the second year of Darius, in the 6th month. Now remember, they started building again on the 2nd month. That's when they laid the foundation. So in the 6th month, in the first day of the month came the word of the Lord to Haggai the prophet, and Zerubbabel and Shealtiel, and the governor of Judah, Joshua and Josedek, and the priests, and so forth, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, saying to them, This people, time is not yet come yet that the house of the Lord should be built. Okay, so they're saying, hey, we got these letters, from Artaxerxes, we got the people around us complaining, this ain't the time yet, we're not ready yet. But Haggai gets them going again in the 6th month. Now, so they stop in the 2nd month. Now, it's possible that these letters are being transferred back and forth at that point in time. There might have been a 4-month period there where they are stopping work until Haggai raises up and gets them to get going again. Okay, so again, with the transference of these letters back and forth, it doesn't take that long to address these letters. So in the 6th month, he prospers on, and Haggai goes on to kind of get them going to build a temple, and it goes up to the 9th month and so forth. Now there's one other one here where it talks about even from the time that the foundation was laid. So this is after the time. It's in Haggai. You can just search for foundation. But again, this is in Darius after the foundation of the temple has already been laid, and the foundation of the temple was laid in the 2nd year of Darius. But Haggai is prophesying in the 2nd year of Darius. So we know that this is all within a few months' time that this is all occurring, and this is all happening. Again, the 2nd year of Darius was the 2nd year that they returned from the captivity, as we read earlier. So therefore, this all has to be happening at the same time. There's no 70-year difference or whatever. This is all within this time period that I talked about here, where these kings are battling for the throne. Now, I believe that this all happened where these kings are deposing each other. I believe that this all happened within probably about 3 weeks, within 1 month. And there's reasons why I think that this is alluded to. First of all, I think Artaxerxes, they say the last tablet that they have recording his name is around Christmas of 424, but it might go into 423 a little bit. The Artaxerxes, I think, dies in 423. From my understanding, I think there is some possibility that there are tablets of Darius and Artaxerxes overlapping in terms of recording their names on these cuneiform tablets in history. Darius, Sogdianus, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, I think they're all possibly kings or battling for kings around the same time, because Artaxerxes is about to die. And I'll show you why I think that here in a second. If we go to Daniel, hang on a second here, I'm going to go to Daniel 10. And the 3rd year of Cyrus is the 3rd year of Cyrus. So Cyrus, at least, if Cyrus is Darius, or if Cyrus is Cyrus the Younger, who is Darius' son, recorded in history, then that would place this roughly around the time of the temple construction is recently restarted again. But in the 3rd year of Cyrus, or thereabouts, or shortly, if Cyrus predates Darius by, say, about a year, if he's like the last year of Artaxerxes, which I think is another possibility, then that would place this around the 2nd year, 1st year of Darius, somewhere in there. So in the 3rd year, because remember, to be a 1st year or 2nd year, it can only be a matter of a couple weeks if that's the changeover for the year. I mean, if you become king at the end of the year, and a few months later it's the new year, okay, that's now the next year on the cycle, because they went by the astronomy, not by the length of days of the king's reign. So whatever year you became king, that was the 1st year, 2nd year, etc. in the astronomical record. So in the 3rd year of Darius the king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar, and it's true. Okay, this is Daniel chapter 10. So we're in the 3rd year of Cyrus. So this is right around the time that all those kings had battled, or shortly thereafter. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. Okay. Now this is the beginning of the year. Okay. This is actually, let's see. It says in the 4th and 20th day of the 1st month. So at the beginning of the year, the 4th and 24th day, he had been mourning for 3 weeks. So that means he'd been mourning since about if it's the 24th day and he'd been mourning for 3 weeks, he'd been mourning since about the 3rd day of the year. It's right at the start of the year that he begins mourning. Well, if this is the third year of Cyrus and he's mourning, who is he mourning for? Is he mourning for maybe some of the kings that just died right in this time? Possibly Artaxerxes, maybe Cyrus himself. I mean, just because if Cyrus would have died recently and they hadn't really established a king yet, they could still be writing this as the third year of Cyrus. So there's a lot of possibilities here. It could be one of the other kings, Xerxes, Sogdianus, who knows? Or maybe he's just mourning because he's trying to understand the prophecies he was given earlier, and this is his way of beseeching God to get answers. But irregardless, he's been mourning 3 full weeks. Now, while he's mourning, an angel comes to visit him. Okay, and what does the angel say? Hang on a second here. He says, then he said, knowest thou where I come unto thee? And now I will return to fight with the prince of Persia. And lo, when I have come forth, lo, the prince of Greece shall come. Okay, so where did he come from? Well, let's back it up here. Okay, well, I'm sorry, let's go forward a little bit. Okay. Also this is the angel speaking, in the first year of Darius the Mede, remember Darius is king this time, even I stood to confirm and strengthen him. Now why is he saying that? Well, if there's a big battle between these kings at this point in time, the angel is supporting Darius to become the emperor. Well, it makes sense because Darius is the king who actually supported the rebuilding of the temple. All the other ones opposed it. We don't know what Xerxes did, but we certainly know that Artaxerxes said don't build a city, and we also know that Sogdianus was a murderer. He murdered Ahasuerus or Xerxes. So, you know, the only person we have on record for actually supporting besides Cyrus is Darius. Okay, for supporting the rebuilding of the temple. So the angel says he's in the first year of Darius the Mede. Even I stood to confirm and strengthen him, which would make sense if Darius is in battle with these other emperors. And this has huge implications on whether the temple gets built out, who ends up becoming the emperor. So of course he would support Darius to become emperor. He says, now I will show the truth. Okay, let me back up for a second here because I got to show you the part. So go prior chapter. Okay, here we go. Now this is earlier when the angel shows up, and Daniel had been fasting and mourning for 3 weeks, asking for answers. And he said unto me, fear not, Daniel, this is the angel speaking, from the first day that thou didst set thy heart to understand and chasten thyself before God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. Okay, so he started mourning. He started chasing himself to try to understand things, and he'd been fasting for about 3 weeks. And he said, and the angel saying, from the very first day that you set your heart to understand and chase yourself before God, your words were heard, and the angel saying that he is come for your words. Okay, he said, but the reason why I didn't show up on day 1, he explains, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me, and for 21 days. That's how long Daniel had been fasting for and mourning. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings, plural, of Persia. So there again, we have these kings during this time period that are all battling out, and the angel is embroiled for 21 days in this process of this battle that's going on. And later on, he says, he in the first year of Darius, he was there to support and strengthen, and to confirm and strengthen Darius. So obviously, what the angel's doing here, it sounds like, is he's in a battle, a spiritual battle, to make sure Darius wins out and claims the throne, because Darius is the one that's going to proclaim that the temple can continue to be rebuilt. So he spends 21 days doing that before he can finally show up to help Daniel. And it says, now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thee in the latter days, for the time of the visions yet for many days. Okay. So we're going to go on here. And okay, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood to confirm and strengthen. There again, the angel is speaking, and he's saying, I confirm Darius. Now, remember, this all started in the third year of Cyrus, in chapter 10. Okay, so in the third year of Cyrus, this angel shows up at the beginning of the year and says, I confirmed and strengthened Darius in his first year. Okay, Well, let's go back to our list here. Again, this is why it can't be Cyrus of 539 BC. Okay, if he's speaking in the third year of Cyrus, and he's saying, I confirmed Darius in his first year. Well, the Cyrus the second, if this all supposedly happened in the reign of the third year of Cyrus the second, there was no Darius before Cyrus the second. So how could the angel have confirmed the reign of Darius in the third year of Cyrus? The only possibility is that whatever Cyrus this is has to be a Cyrus after the reign of Darius. And we already showed that it has to be Darius II. Therefore, this third year of Cyrus that we're talking about is during the reign of Darius II. So the big mystery is, who is the Cyrus? Which Cyrus is it talking about? Is it Darius II? Is it Cyrus the Younger? Is it a co-regent? Somebody who took the throne about a year before Darius took the throne or so? Is it Artaxerxes? That's something that needs to be hashed out a little bit more. But there's definitely another Cyrus besides the one in 539, or the historical record is wrong, and the one in 539 is actually reigned much later, and the whole understanding of the reigns of the kings and so forth is out of whack, which is possible too, because a lot of the history that we have is very in pieces, and much of it contradicts the other, and if science and our scholars got evolution wrong and believe that the Earth is millions of years old, they can certainly get something as wrong as the ages and the reigns of the pharaohs and of Babylon and of the Persians. So who knows, But anyways, so getting back here to where we are with in the first, this angel speaking, it says, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood to confirm and strengthen them. Now I'll show you what will happen in the last days. Now here's the other reason why this has to be Darius II. He says, he's speaking in the third year of Cyrus. He says, and now I will show you the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be richer than they all. And by his strength and through his riches he shall stir them all up against the realm of Greece. And the mighty king shall stand up that will rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided towards the 4 winds of heaven, and shall, but not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion in which he ruled, and for his kingdom shall be plucked up for others even besides those. Okay, who's he talking about? Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great took over the Persian kingdom after their reign ended, and he died very young. And when he died, he didn't leave an heir. So his 4 generals split up the kingdom between themselves and created 4 different empires. One of them became the Seleucid Empire, which ruled Judea until basically the Romans took it over, minus some other stuff that was going on between Egypt and the Hasmonean dynasty and so forth. But anyways, the point is, he's talking about Alexander the Great here. So there's going to be 3 kings that will yet stand up, and the 4th king will be richer than them all, and then Alexander the Great shows up in the scene and takes over. Okay, let's go back to our kings list here. Okay, so if we're in the reign of a co-regent around the reign of the time of Darius II here, third year of Cyrus, but probably the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, if Cyrus predates him by about a year, and they're co-regents. Or Cyrus had recently died and Darius became full emperor. So if we're in this time frame here, right around after the return to captivity, and there's going to be 3 more kings, and the 4th one's going to be greater than them all, richer than them all, and then Alexander the Great shows up. Let's count them here. 1, Artaxerxes the 2nd, 2, Artaxerxes the 3rd, 3, Artaxerxes the 4th, and then the 4th king will be richer than them all. That's Darius the 3rd. And he shall stir up the whole realm of Grecia, and then Alexander the Great comes and takes over, and his kingdom's divided between his 4 generals. Well, Darius III went to war against Alexander the Great, or it stirred him up. Alexander the Great comes after him, takes over his kingdom. There it is. There's no other possibility here, because if this is taking place in Cyrus II, which is Cyrus the Great, there's a heck of a lot more than 3 kings and a 4th king that stand up in Persia. So there again, another confirmation that we have to be talking about this time period right in here. This is the time period where the temple was rebuilt and the captivity ended. No question. The only question that remains is, who's Cyrus, who's Nebuchadnezzar, what are the actual times of the reigns, who's Belshazzar and so forth. And is the historical record wrong, or are we misunderstanding it, or are we misinterpreting it, or were different names used to refer to different rulers? Those are the things that need to be hashed out. But to me, it's absolutely no question that this is the time frame of Daniel's prophecy. Now, why do they hold to the 539 date? Well, this is important because if the 422 date is shown to be true, and I believe I've just demonstrated it is, then getting back to the whole purpose of this video, which is Bible chronology and the prophecy of Daniel's 70 weeks, we have text of Daniel and we have Old Testament, the Septuagint and so forth, that go back before 70 AD that show this prophecy is in place, okay, that existed before the temple was torn down, which means that the 490-week prophecy of Daniel foretold the destruction of the temple. And since we know that it had the text of Daniel are older than 70 AD, we've proven that the Bible is prophetic, and the Bible is the Word of God, and the Bible is true. Now you can see why they'd want to hide that date, why they'd want to make it look like 539 or something else, because the enemy does not want that shown that the Bible is true, because if the Bible is true, and all this stuff is real, and everything else that we learn, and all the creation versus evolution, if evolution is a deception, and the kings of this world and all that stuff is lies, if the Bible is true, then that creates a problem for the world system, because they want to, the kingdom of darkness wants to oppose the Bible. So this proves it. That's why they'd want to hide it. And also because it foretells the coming of the end of the age, which is coming up very quickly, because a day is 1,000 years, according to the Lord. Well, if the chronology that I showed you shows that creation started around roughly around 3968, 3967 BC, and it's a 6,000 year progression, and then there's 1,000 year of reign of Christ that's foretold, okay, which is a day of peace. So just as the Lord created 6 days, and then the 7th day there's a day of rest. That day of peace is coming up very quick, which means that Jesus is coming back very, very soon. Possibly tomorrow, possibly in the next 20 years, but not much longer than that. It's got to be somewhere within that time frame. So this proves that the Bible is true and that Jesus is about to return. And it makes sense, because if the temple is to be raised on the 3rd day, and it's 1,000 years, a day is 1,000 years, and the temple was torn down in 70 AD, okay, or actually before that, even at the time of Jesus, if we're not talking about Herod's temple, but the temple that Zerubbabel and the captives rebuilt, okay, then there again, that means that in order for the temple to be rebuilt, you have to have the nation of Israel comes back again, just like it's prophesied, happened in 1948, and then on the 3rd day, which is we're about entering into, the temple is rebuilt, and then that's the time that Christ returns. So again, Israel had to become a nation again for that to happen. All these prophecies are starting to take place in our time. The gospel had to be preached at the end of the earth. That's certainly, we're at that time for, this communication system allows it to be sent everywhere. Civilization spread over all the earth to the point where we have to cordon off wilderness areas, so we're at the end of the march of civilization. We've got nowhere else to go on the planet as far, no more frontiers left. So we know we're getting close to the end of time, which is all the more reason why now is the time to seek the Lord and to know Jesus and to repent and to ask Him in your heart, because now is about the end of time is about to happen and the judgment's about to occur. That's why this information has to get out and it has to be known, because it's so important. It's so critical. So anyways, getting back to, let's see here. So we have Alexander the Great takes over. And I kind of went through all these different time frames here. There was one more thing I want to say here too. Just one second. Okay, here it is. Zechariah, again, Haggai and Zechariah are the two that are prophesying and getting them to start rebuild the temple again. In Zechariah 11:8, there's this interesting passage here. It says, 3 shepherds I cut off in 1 month, and my soul abhorred them, and their soul also abhorred me. Okay, 3 shepherds I cut off in 1 month. What is he talking about? That's kind of a curious scripture. Now, if you read the book of Esther, there's this story that takes place in the reign of Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes. And there's only, going back to the, let's see here, the list of the reign of Achaemenid. They call it Achaemenid, but it's the Medo-Persian kings list here. Okay. There's only 2 Xerxes. There's Xerxes the first, which is the great, and Xerxes the second. Okay. Xerxes the second, very, very, very short reign. So it was during the reign of Ahasuerus that the book of Esther took place. And book of Esther basically they're going to try to create this Holocaust and wipe out the Jews. But Esther, the queen, who was Jewish herself, through her uncle Mordecai, they're able to turn that plot around on the conspirators and actually cause the enemies of the Jews to be wiped out. And then they have this festival called Purim that's based on that. But anyways, this all happened during the years of the reign of Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes. So it has to be Xerxes the Great, because he's the only one that reigned long enough for all this Book of Esther to occur. And he reigns from 485 to 465. Okay, well, that is during the time of the captivity, which makes sense because they're captives throughout the empire at that time. So I mean, they're sold into slaves and so forth. But the reign of Ahasuerus, this is starts, according to this, approximately about 7 years after the temple is destroyed. Okay, and his reign lasts about 20 years. And this stuff that happens in the Book of Esther happens about 12 years into his reign. So, anyways, the empire at that time was going to basically wipe out the Jewish population. They were responsible for the emperor and the kings and so forth, responsible for watching over their people, but they instead took their flock and they marked them for destruction. Okay, and they were going to wipe them out. So let's look at what is prophesied here in Zechariah. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, feed the flock of slaughter." Who's the flock of slaughter? Well, it was the Jewish people who were marked for destruction at the time of Esther, whose possessors, those that hold them in bondage, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them, blessed be the Lord, say, "Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich," and their own shepherds pity them not. Those that are supposed to watch them and take care of them don't take any pity on them. For I will no more pity the inhabitants of the land, saith the Lord. But lo, I will deliver the men, every one into his neighbor's hand, and unto the hand of the king, and they shall smite the land, and out of their hand I will not deliver them. So he's proclaiming judgment on the people that had the Israelites in bondage and had a mark for slaughter. And he says, "I will feed the flock of slaughter, even you, O poor of the flock. And I took me 2 staves, one called Beauty and the other called Bands." By the way, how did in Esther, how were the Israelites delivered? Well, they were delivered through Esther, who was very beautiful, okay, and through Mordecai, who served the king. So we have Beauty and Bands. He took the 2 staves. It was the beauty of Esther that made her queen, because there was a beauty pageant basically to replace Vashti, and that's how she, as a Jew, became queen to a Persian. And then it says, "I took my 2 staves, Beauty and the other called Bands, and I fed the flock. 3 shepherds also," this is the key part, "3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month, and my soul loathed them, and their soul abhorred me. And then I said, I will not feed you. That dieth, let it die, and that be cut off, let it be cut off, and let the rest eat every one the flesh of another. And I took my staff, even Beauty, and cut it asunder, that I might break the covenant with which I made with the people." Okay, "and it was broken that day, and the poor of the flock that waited upon me knew that it was the word of the Lord." Okay, well, three shepherds were cut off in 1 month. It says, "And 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month, and my soul loathed them." Well, that's a really kind of strange statement if you don't think about it, because who are 3 shepherds? Well, the shepherds, it just said the shepherds are the people that aren't taking pity on them, that are their captors basically, and aren't watching over them, but they're all cut off in 1 month. Well, there's only one king of the Medo-Persian Empire at a time, except, going back to our little thing here, except in this period here where they're fighting over the kings, and it just as the angel had said to Daniel, he returned to Persia to fight with the kings, plural, of Persia. Okay, so if Artaxerxes dies and Xerxes takes over, but then Xerxes is murdered by Sogdianus, and then Sogdianus is sent out into exile and dies a few months later, or maybe even in the same time frame, and then Darius becomes king. What are the odds that this all happened in 1 month? And what are the odds that that month is the 21 days that Daniel is mourning? Okay, within that time frame, the first month of the third year of the reign of Cyrus, which would have been around 420. We could say it's 423. That's one possibility, or maybe that the 21 days doesn't refer to that at all. But either way, what if Artaxerxes died and Xerxes was murdered and Sogdianus was sent into exile? All happened within 1 month time frame. Now and Darius is made king. Now this prophecy that we have in Zechariah makes a little more sense, and it says, and thus saith the Lord, feed the flock of the slaughter, whose possessors slay them. And it says, 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month. My soul loathed them, and their soul abhorred me. The only shepherd that was supporting the restoration of the temple was Darius, other than Cyrus. And again, Cyrus isn't in that list of those kings, so we don't know unless Cyrus is the name of one of them. But it doesn't sound like it. So apparently, again, this is judgment, probably going all the way back to being the flock marked for slaughter, and how the Persian Empire had almost slaughtered the Israelites, save for the actions of Esther and Mordecai. Okay, and so God pronounced judgment upon them, and then Darius became king, and then of course it was only a few kings later that Alexander the Great finally takes over the empire, and at that point in time, the Persian Empire is no more. So, it seems to make a lot more sense to me. But that brings us all the way up to 70 AD. And then, of course, what happens. There's other stuff I can go into, and I'll probably have to do that in another video. But talk about the different days in 70 AD. Like, for example, there talks about the 1300. Blessed is he that waits. There's a prophecy about the 1335 days in Daniel. Blessed is he that waits till the end of the 1335 days. Well, if you look at the time frame from when the fall of Masada was, okay, going back to the time that the temple was destroyed and the sacrifice, evening, the morning sacrifice was taken away, and the abomination of desolation was set up, and you add the number of days together, it's 1335 days. Okay, so I'll go into more of that in another video. But these other prophecies in Daniel, many of them do apply to what happened in 70 AD. Now, one thing I want to say about that is there's this idea of preterism, which suggests that everything took place in 70 AD and it's all done, and even Jesus returned in a sense in 70 AD in the clouds and so forth. And I'm not a preterist. I don't believe in that. I believe that there's a lot of stuff that prophetically happened that was alluded to in that generation, because like the stone, not one stone will be left upon another in the temple, Jesus said, and all these things will be fulfilled in that generation. I think those things were fulfilled, but I think there's this concept of dual fulfillments, and there's stuff that's going to happen in the future. But by studying how certain things were fulfilled in that time frame, it helps us understand what's going to happen very shortly in the future with the coming of Christ again. So I'm not a preterist in that sense. I do believe that Jesus is still yet going to return, and he's going to set up a 1,000-year reign of Christ, but that's still yet to happen. But that's for another video. So we're going on probably 3 hours. My videos are getting pretty long here, but that's my basically take on Bible chronology that brings us up to this point. So to kind of give you an idea here what year we're at. Oh, another thing too, the crucifixion of Christ. One thing I found on that chronology as well. Turns out that it takes place exactly 4,000 years after creation. So that's I think kind of an interesting coincidence. But let's go with 3968, assuming 4 days before the sun, moon, and stars were created and set in motion. So 3968, and we're going to we're going to add. It's year 2014 right now. We're going to add actually 1 year because there's no year 0, so we got to make it 2015. And that puts us roughly around the year 5983, give or take a year. So if we think about the millennial return of Christ, and again, this could be off a little bit. There could be some errors, here or there, but the time is definitely getting short, okay, before Christ should return. And if 6 days is 1,000 years and Jesus is coming back soon, it could happen tomorrow. I mean, it could be based off of the time that he showed up in the temple when he was 12, which would happen around 1314 BC somewhere, or 13 or 14 AD, somewhere in there, which would mean that Christ could return in this year. Or he might not return for the next 20 years or so. But either way, I think the time, we don't know the day or the hour, but we are commanded to know the season. We're kind of rebuked for not knowing the season. And we know, when the fig leaves start to sprout, while Israel as a nation is starting to come back, we can see the time is short. So now is, if anything, now is the time to get right with God, because there's not a lot of time left. And I hope this video has shown that. And you know, you need to crack open a Bible. You need to seek the Lord. You need to get down and pray and get right with God. Repent of any sins that you have. Ask Jesus into your heart. We don't have much time left. Jesus is coming back soon. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to post some more in the future. But I know this one's kind of long, but if you have any questions, go ahead and leave comments. Visit again, grailoftruth.com. And God bless you, and I hope you got something out of this. If you have any critiques, I'm open to those as well, because I'm certainly revising this as I go along too. But I think you can kind of see now where I got my chronology from and how I differ, and hopefully that you can see the Bible, I think, supports what I laid out here. So God bless you, and thanks for watching.